Got a sunburn to peel the daggers off your tongue. Young and dumb, I'm rotting like a bed sore in a cold case that's never gonna be more than scratching at the walls while you're waiting for a bullet to come. All along I've been treading in the deep end. Throw my mirror in the cupboard for the weekend. Try and put together pieces while I'm dreaming, but nothing's adding up to a thing but a hole in the head.
Woke pirates, yes they're robbing, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? Jeff Evely, the Magnanimous GenX'er Male, back with you now on this 4th day of April 2023, and I practice radical candor. I think I was just making it in the nick of time there to get my banner up, so pardon me for the slightly delayed response here. Garbad over on Rumble. The first one on the board says, "Good day, Sergeant Major. Keep up the great work. Don't mind if I do." Thank you very much for the support. And Rob K is there saying, good afternoon, evening, everyone. Giving us the victory, Maple Leaf, and the triple slashy right back at you, brother. And I appreciate you as well. And we got Patricia over here on Facebook saying, "Good evening, everyone," and giving us the hearts, Canada hearts. And there's Rob. He's everywhere. He's over there on YouTube as well. Good afternoon / evening, all. Right on, Rob. And Colleen says, "Good evening, freedom lovers." Hello, Colleen. Nick Larker is giving us the triple slashy. Welcome aboard, brother. And Cindy says, "Good evening, Jeff," giving us the hearts. Good day, everyone. Smiley face. Cindy, thanks for always being with us. Marianne with us as always as well, says, "Good evening, everyone," and gives us the hearts. And Brenda says, "Good evening, all," gives a smiley face and a triple slashy. Thanks for being with us. And Mike is here saying, "Howdy. How do you do, brother?" And Colleen says, "Tonight I'm having dinner and a show." Nice. Okay, so you guys, hopefully the regulars don't mind the new time slot. Actually, the new old time slot, because I started out in the evenings, and then I went to the mornings, and then I tried the noon hour, and now I'm back in the evenings. I think this is probably where I'm going to stay. Maybe it was just meant to be that way. Gerald says, "Hi. Hey, how you doing?" And let me see. Ash is here saying, "Hey, you filthy heathens. P.S. Jeff, if you should do a cover of Sound of Silence by Disturbed, was listening to it today." I have been told that. A few people have actually requested that I do a cover of that. I don't know. It might be tough to pull off just on the acoustic. I mean, he's got like the freaking taiko drums and all this stuff in that one there. I don't know, but I'm just kind of a solo acoustic guy, so maybe there's something I could do with it. I have to get pretty damn creative though. ODST 0922 gives us a /E, and Christine is here saying hello /E, giving us the wave. Hey, how you doing? And FYMM, we all know what that means. It says click like and share. Yes, please. I could use all the help that I can get. I'm told it helps the algorithm, so please do that. And Andrew's here saying, hey, Jeff Evely. Hey, what's up, Andrew? Thanks, brother, for being with us. Okay, let's dive into it, everybody. Here is our philosophy quote for the day. This is Epictetus, and he is something like one of the OGs of Stoicism. Zeno is really the OG. He's kind of the father of Stoicism, but Epictetus, very widely cited, especially by Marcus Aurelius, who is my boy, whom I'm always plugging around here. Read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, and you will feel better. And Marcus actually refers to Epictetus probably more than all of the other quoted philosophers combined. So yeah, he is the real deal. And he says, the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Well, we have an awful lot of glory ahead of us here in Canada because as everyone can see by now, I'm sure. Well, not everyone. Everyone around here can see we have some great difficulties that lie ahead. We're stacking up a few wins early here in 2024, but we're not out of the woods yet. So prepare yourselves for the great difficulty, but just remember that great glory lies on the other side. Okay, here is our meme for the day, and this is actually Justin Trudeau's alter ego on X, and he's got a blue check mark somehow. So he's pretty awesome, and he has a picture of Justin Trudeau. This is presumably from the school at which he taught. This picture was circulated quite a bit. He's got his arm around a couple of ladies. He's in a picture with like 4 ladies and a couple of dudes in the back. So 4 ladies are up front, and he's got his arm around a couple of them. Hand maybe a little too high on the midriff there for a grown-ass man to be interacting with his students that way. But the one who purportedly got the $2.5 million payout is apparently right there on his right. And Justin Trudeau's alter ego is saying, back when I was a teacher, I spent a lot of my own money to keep students' mouths full. Think of the children. Oh, yes. Yeah. Everybody is Helen Lovejoy these days. So that is our cuttlefish cry minister, everybody. Okay. So what do we got here? Oh, here we go. Here's Ian Miles Chong. And he is tweeting out a clip of Jimmy Kimmel here. And he says, Jimmy Kimmel says traveling to Japan made him realize how, quote, filthy and disgusting the U.S. is by comparison. He's not wrong. Okay, I'm going to let him say this. Let's put Jimmy on here, and then we'll talk a little bit about why he's not wrong.
Traveling to Japan, I realized that this place, this USA we're always chanting about, is a filthy and disgusting country. We were in Japan for 7 days. Not only did I not encounter a single dirty bathroom, the bathrooms in Tokyo and Kyoto are cleaner than our operating rooms here. Everywhere you go, the bathrooms are clean. They don't smell bad. They have those toilets that wash you from the inside out. Just in a hotel, restaurants, bars, truck stops. I went to 2 truck stops. I swear to God, the bathrooms cleaner than Jennifer Garner's teeth. The cleanest, beautiful. And it's not just the bathroom. There's no litter. They clean up after themselves. They bring their garbage to their houses. And it's like the whole country is Disneyland, and we're living at Six Flags.
Says talk show host Jimmy Kimmel later said, quote, we are like hogs compared to the Japanese, close quote, and wondered what they think of Americans.
Traveling to Japan,
okay, so he's gross. I think that was Patricia who pointed that out initially, so good job on that, Patricia. Not that I didn't know it already. Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel is just a disgraceful human being. So yeah, he says that the United States is a filthy and disgusting country compared to Japan for all the reasons that he just gave, like the garbage and general cleanliness and lack of vagrancy over there in Japan. But let's check out what's going on with Japan here, guys. So here I have macro trends, and this is Japan net migration for 1950 to 2024. This is one of those things you see. Japan, they don't have to be woke. They're their history is about as imperialist as it gets. And I don't think that they need to self-flagellate over their colonialist past, because here is their net migration. And let's see, for 2021, it was 0.534 per thousand population. And it went up a little bit to 0.525, then down to 5.516, and it currently sits at 0.489 per 1,000 population, and that's a 5.23% decline from 2023. So in 2024, as you can see, this is consistent with the previous years. It's like a half a percentage. Okay, so they have a half a percentage for per thousand population, or a half a person, basically, is what this means. Is they get half an immigrant for every 1,000 population in the 4 previous years here that's being shown. Now let's look at the net U.S. migration. So same statistic. Now remember, they have a half a person for every 1,000 that comes into Japan, and here is the United States. So they have 2.8 in 2020. 2.7 in 2021, 2.7 in 2022, and then 2.7, a little bit higher, 768 for 2023. So that is like more than 5 times the amount of immigration in the United States per capita that they're taking in relative to Japan. Now, and that is the thing, like Japan is incredibly ethnically homogenous. I'm not even sure if we could become citizens there. I think it's pretty tough to do that. But, and you know, they have the same kind of demographic crisis that we're going through as well. Like they have a baby boomer generation that's just about to retire, and it's going to be a catastrophe for their social services because they don't have enough young people really to support the system. So they got the same problem that we have here, and that is the reason, as far as I can tell, one of the main driving reasons, at least, why we have to import hordes of people from all over the world. It's in order to support this Ponzi scheme of a Canada pension plan that we have that's currently running over $1 trillion in unfunded liabilities right when the boomer generation is about to punch out. So I think there's a bit of a panic to bring in enough people to finance that Ponzi scheme. But you know, that's just me. I'm not an economist, nor am I economist adjacent. But they are running over $1 trillion in unfunded liabilities, and they do not report that to Parliament. It doesn't go into their parliamentary report. And speaking of Canada, here's Canada net migration rate. And so just to refresh, in Japan, there's a half a person per 1,000 people coming in every year. In the United States, there's a little over 2.5 people, almost 3 people per 1,000 population coming in. And here in Canada, we have 6. It's over 6 people per 1,000 population. So that is double the rate per capita. That is over double the rate per capita of the United States. And it's like 12 times the per capita rate of Japan. So yeah, that's Canada, everybody. And you know, I think that means we're in a hell of a lot of trouble. We're gonna slide down this decline a hell of a lot faster. We might be a little behind the curve with the relative to the Americans. Like we're basically one election cycle behind the Americans and further down the road to serfdom. So you know, Trudeau is something like our Obama regime. He came much later, well, not terribly later than Obama, but one election cycle, right? And it's all the same progressive wokeness and stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff started under Obama, and Trudeau is trying to out Obama. And so now we have 6 people per 1,000 population coming in 2023. Yeah, all these years. And that, again, is 12 times the per capita rate of Japan and twice the per capita rate, about 2.5 times the per capita rate of the US. Okay, so here's Ian Miles Chung, and he says, listen to this woman and how she feels unsafe because of the migrant men coming into Britain. So this is something that we have going on all over the West. It's all part of the commie psyop to weaken the West from within. They'll have us conquer without even firing a shot. It's part of the strategy, at least anyway. And here is the same thing is going on over in Britain, where they famously have had these rape gangs, you know, like the Rotherham rape gangs, which the media reported as Asian rape gangs, but they were in fact Pakistani. They're Muslim rape gangs is what they are, but you're not going to hear the mainstream tell you that. They'll try to hide that under the banner of Asian, which is what you're supposed to say instead of Oriental. So everybody thinks Oriental when they hear that. But anyway, yeah, huge problems over there in the UK. And here is a couple of talking heads on that subject.
What do you think, Alex? What do you, because you talked about this morning.
This is such an important issue for me because I've been living in London for 10 years. I've also lived in multiple other countries around the world. Never before have I felt as unsafe as I do now. When I walk down the street, I'm increasingly being leered at. I'm increasingly being followed like I'm going around the souks of Morocco. And it's not visibly to me anyway, people who were born and bred here. It isn't. And it's very difficult because we're not allowed to talk about it because, oh my gosh, that breaks taboo. Oh, you're a racist if you say this. I'm sorry. A lot of women going about their daily business feel that their safety is being directly threatened by people who are coming from different cultures. And this needs to be discussed because I've had enough. All my other female friends have had enough. When I put this stuff online, the number of comments online from other women saying they've had enough and saying thank you for talking about this. Was it not enough when we noticed what was going on with grooming gangs? Was it not enough when we see what's happened to the victim of Abdullah Zaidi? When are we going to have the conversation that women's safety is being mortgaged at the altar of mass immigration and this faux political correctness?
And I speak to many other women who suffer the same indignities and offences like you do, who don't have a public profile, who are not in the media, and they are echoing what you are saying about the utterly unacceptable behaviour that they are being subjected to, and I keep urging them to report it.
Yep. Wokeness hurts women, everybody. That could have been a good title for this one as well. Wokeness hurts women. So just keep that in mind as we move forward here. Okay, here is Son of a Bench, and he says Trudeau is creating another program. Canada Builds, a $15 billion program that includes low-interest construction loans and building rental housing units. Yeah, they're low interest for now, right? Just like those low-interest mortgages. The Liberals are looking to spend their way out of this mess. They have cause for Canada. I don't really know about the interest rates, by the way, but I'm just
generational.
Obviously, my current perception is based on my previous experience, and pardon me if I'm a little bit leery when it comes to offers of help coming from the current regime. Here we go.
The federal government, we've been taking leadership and making those generational investments to incentivize and support more supply. Housing gets built when every order of government steps up and our private sector and nonprofit partners have the right incentives to get shovels in the ground. Well, today, we're announcing that upcoming Budget 2024 will invest in a new initiative we're calling Canada Builds. Canada Builds is going to turbocharge affordable apartment construction in partnership with provinces and territories. It'll provide low-cost loans, help speed up development, and build projects at the scale necessary to meet the urgent needs of Canadians. Let me walk through the details. We're going to make a
Okay, that's enough out of that guy. I forgot to give my Trudeau warning there. So, and Patricia, I saw the spammer. I think I got them. Okay. And Colleen is saying the same thing. Yeah, that's the one that I got there. Terrace Bodan should be gone. And Banks is pointing out that give a Trudeau warning, will you, Jeff? Yeah. Sorry, I'm breaking my own protocol here, guys. My bad. Okay. So they've stolen so much money from Canadians and flooded us with immigrants so badly that nobody can afford to buy a home anymore. And so now they're going to, what do they do? Like after they've stolen all of our money and everything's a mess. Well, the answer is, to steal more money, more taxes, more socialized programs. As Friedrich Hayek pointed out in The Road to Serfdom is paved through a socialist democracy. So that is where we're headed. All right. So now here is them Sterry, and they're saying East Hastings Street, Vancouver, in the early 1970s, and before it began the crap it became, I think they mean, is it became the crap hole it is now. So this is a pretty cool picture. This is from the 70s. This is Vancouver. And as you can see, it's nice and clean. Like people, are picking up the trash. It's not falling apart like Jimmy Kimmel describes. It's not a filthy and disgusting country. It actually looks quite wholesome. So much so that I don't think modern Canadians can really recognize that. But that is a pristine city and appears to be a bustling and cosmopolitan. So that was the 70s. And Here we are now. So Tyler is saying, this is Vancouver, Canada, a city that's been made part of an experiment to decriminalize drugs. Quote, drug users aged 18 and older can carry up to 2.5 grams of opioids, including fentanyl, meth, crack, heroin, morphine, ecstasy, and powder cocaine, close quote. Does decriminalizing drugs actually work when mental health treatment rehab is not made an imminent priority? Here is what I saw walking down East Hastings neighborhood in broad daylight. So this is broad frickin' daylight. Look at this.
This is Vancouver, Canada, a city that made every drug legal.
All drugs are good and balanced. God made all drugs.
Are you on Trank right now?
I don't know, I might be. More drugs, the better.
How easy would it be for us to get like fentanyl right now?
Yeah, but we're talking about.
Is that meth right there in your hand?
It's fentanyl and a little bit of meth. Everyone's stealing, everyone's selling their body.
How much do you use in a day?
7 grams.
Holy smokes, bro.
How do you afford your drug addiction out here?
Boosting.
See people die out here?
I have, yes.
You don't know what's in your dope.
Everything's laced with fentanyl down here. They want to get you addicted.
That's an active overdose in real time right there. This guy's wrapped in a trash can right here.
We even know he's alive. I was worried about you. You're in a trash bag. Okay, just checking on you, brother. This is an OD. You doing okay? You guys got Narcan? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, looks like she was overdosing, and as she was overdosing, they're robbing her.
How long have you been using fentanyl?
6+ years.
So is this your buddy right here?
Yeah, that's my friend.
So, so he's nodding out. Is he okay?
He's fine with me, I think.
With the guy over here just nodded out, passed out on the curb.
Sir, are you okay? Just want to check on you. You okay, brother?
Someone's gonna make sure they are alive.
Hey guys, are you guys okay? Looks like they're both breathing.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, so now obviously that is more to do with the kind of crackpot socialist theories around the decriminalization of drugs than it is to do with immigration. But I think we're going to see that these things actually intersect. It is an intersectional hierarchy of oppression, after all. And the Marxist praxis lens through which we see the intersectional coalition forming, that of Islamunism, that particular lens is intersectional. So yeah, we'll see a little bit intersecting here in a minute. Okay, so here is this is CrimeNet, and they're saying broad daylight shooting in downtown Vancouver. Okay, check this out. This is very fresh, actually. So when did they post this? This is April 2nd. So this just happened the other day. Okay, if you're just listening, this guy jumps out of a car. He's stopped in traffic. He goes running up to the car that's at the front of the line. Two guys running up with pistols, and they're just shooting right inside the driver's window. Car smashes in. He broadsides somebody else, and looks like somebody goes running in out the passenger side. And these guys are just firing their pistols down the street in broad daylight. This guy looks like he's finishing that driver off or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, he's still shooting into the car. Broad daylight and running away. Okay. And then they just back up and take off. So there you go. And this is Lieutenant Retired LAPD Frank Colombo. I don't think that's his real name, but this is March 31st. Vancouver police attended a shooting at Richards and Robinson, and second shooting April 4th at Homer and West Pender. April 2nd, our Mayor Ken Sim asked us, quote, who else is excited to enjoy the fresh air and vibrant energy of our city's outdoor spaces, close quote. No thanks. Too much energy for me. And he's retweeting the graphic here from the police press release. So yeah, March 31st, we have a shooting, and then April 2nd, there's a shooting, second shooting on April 4th. So yeah, it's Vancouver, I think, is a harbinger
China
of
wants
things
to control us, and
where you wherever you implement these woke policies, like they're just a little bit further down that road to serfdom. Wherever you implement these kind of policies, this progressive mindset, when the progressive politics seeps in there, what you see is societal collapse. Okay, and here, let me just read the caption here. Oh, yeah, this is Fox News. This is from YouTube. Says, wake up. Kristi Noem sends an ominous warning to Americans. Okay, so here we go.
China wants to control us, and they want to do that by controlling our food supply. The Chinese Communist Party is not our friend. They're not our partner, and they're not our ally. They're our enemy.
And then with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem testifying in front of the House Agriculture Committee on Capitol Hill last week on China seeking to control the entire food supply chain in the United States. China already dominates the pork industry. All of this as a new TikTok post goes viral this week featuring a Venezuelan national with over 500,000 followers telling migrants who cross the United States border illegally how to seize homes in America and invoke squatters' rights to unoccupied houses in America. 1 week after the House passed a bill to ban TikTok if it does not separate itself from the Chinese parent company ByteDance, no word on whether Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will actually bring that bill up for debate in the Senate. Joining me now with more on the threat from communist China is the woman herself, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Governor, great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Maria.
Well, you've been adamant about protecting America's farmland, certainly in your state, from CCP influence. Tell us what you've seen and what kind of behavior we should expect from the CCP should they own farmland in America.
I agree. This anchor's voice is a little bit shrill, so bear with me.
What I hope the American people realize is that the country that controls our food supply, they control us. And so it's incredibly important that we pay attention to what's been happening for decades. This is my 30th year of working on ag policy, food policy in the United States of America. And over those years, I've watched the CCP come in and buy up our fertilizer companies, our chemical companies. They've stolen our genetics. They've come in and bought up our processing systems. In fact, we've had programs where we've given CCP members and Chinese citizens citizenship in exchange for investment into our processing systems. And now they have dramatically increased the amount of purchases of ag land in the United States. That completes their control of our food supply chain, which means that the country that feeds us, they will control us, and it's a national security issue. We need to care who our neighbors are, and not just because of how we feed ourselves, but also because a lot of times that ag land is right next to our national security interests. It's right next to our air bases, next to our military installations, where our platforms are, where they spy and steal information from us.
Well, already Hong Kong and the CCP have passed new security laws, which many say will further erode civil liberties in America and any businesses operating in China. Do you believe that American businesses, managers, CEOs understand the threat that you are referring to?
I think they're starting to understand it, but I also think that they're under the control of the economics of doing business with China. And that's the problem, is so many of our businesses have gotten so dependent, and our farmers through trade agreements and exports have gotten so dependent on the market that is China and the size of it, that they need to really wake up and realize who does come first. Is it America and our safety, or is it the economics of really what we need to decide here we stand for? So that's what I think is so powerful about this conversation right now, is that China is willing to put their people through inhumanities, in terrible situations in order to get what their agenda is. And their agenda is to become a world dominating power.
Okay. So a couple of things on there. Of course, they're going after the food and the ag and the like all of this stuff, like the nitrogen, fertilizer, carbon, all this. I think it all goes back to them. That appears to be the case to me. It's all part of the communist psyop to weaken the West. But she's talking about the investment piece as well. Like, they're buying up this land, and you'll notice that she says they're not just buying up the agricultural land, but they're actually buying land that is close to defense facilities, right, to military facilities, which puts them in an ideal position to spy on the Americans. And there's been
25 to 35%.
Sorry, that one's getting away from me. There has been an awful lot of investment, Chinese investment, in the left coast. You'll notice that all of the worst cities are on the left coast. It's not just Vancouver, it's Seattle, it's Portland, it's San Diego, San Francisco, like LA. They're all going to hell in a handbasket in a hard and fast way. It, I think, has everything to do with Chinese interests on the left coast. Okay, and here is another video from YouTube, and it says Scott McGregor inside CCP hybrid warfare operations in Canada. So if you haven't read it already, I actually just finished it. I was kind of following, but I'm always juggling books and stuff. Anyway, here is The Mosaic Effect. Okay, awesome book. If you want to know what the heck is going on in Canada, Scott McGregor, he's a Canadian Armed Forces veteran, intelligence operator. So yeah, it's very well sourced, well researched. and terrifying. So, yeah, here is Scott McGregor. He is the author of The Mosaic Effect, How the Chinese Communist Party Started a Hybrid War in America's Backyard. And where's America's backyard, everybody? It's Canada, right? It's right here in Canada. So the hybrid war is here in Canada. And here is Scott McGregor, author of The Mosaic Effect.
25 to 35% of the fentanyl coming to the U.S. is actually coming through the Canadian border. It's coming from the north through Vancouver. You typically only hear about the Mexican border.
Yes, the threat from Mexico has been highly publicized. There's movies about it. The El Chapo, the Sicario movie, and that kind of thing. And there has been some documentary filmmaking that explained that, yes, there's a connection between China and Mexico, and they've taught them how to do certain things, how to create fentanyl. Vancouver is known as a transshipment point, both across the Pacific to Japan, Australia, and others, but also to the United States. Being able to create something in Canada with a border that is the largest undefended border in the world, with our largest trading partner, makes it quite easy to get that into the US. And there's starting to be a little more awareness, but again, enforcement in Canada, stopping it before it can get there, is just not happening.
Yeah. So the enforcement in Canada is not happening. Of course, we're seeing all kinds of that with another sham of an inquiry that's underway right now, the one on foreign interference. And, you know, they've added India and Russia to this, even though it was only leaked that the intelligence agencies were worried about China. So they're trying to water it down. And, you know, I showed some clips from it here already, and there's all kinds of stupidity going on even now. And it's a Liberal appointee judge. You know, obviously the political will to do anything about this is not there. And I believe it is because our elites are captured and they're working for China. He's talking a little bit about the fentanyl crisis there. Of course, we see that all over the left coast, and there is the Mexico connection as well. Here on the program of Chinese nationals coming across the border, the southern border of the U.S. from Mexico, of course. But the fentanyl operation, it used to be the case that the Chinese would ship all this fentanyl. They'd flood us with fentanyl, North America, that is, through Mexico. But the U.S. got after Mexico for that for a little bit. But so now what they have is they're bringing the precursors in. Like they bring all the ingredients that you need to make fentanyl, but it's not assembled yet. So they have these pill presses down there, Chinese pill presses, where they're making the pills. Fentanyl, you know, they're just reassembling it basically in Mexico and then shipping it across. But they're absolutely flooding us. And I point to the it's a propaganda line, I believe. This whole thing about the opium wars, where we've been teaching our own school children that the British forced opium on China in the wars of the 1840s, the British Sino Wars, the 1840s. But they never discussed opium in the debate, in the parliamentary debate in Britain. It wasn't in the declaration for war, and it wasn't in the treaties that they signed with Beijing. It appears to be the case that the British were actually more concerned with Beijing treating them as an equal power, and for them to stop interning their citizens and treating them like a subordinate power, wouldn't let them dock their ships when they were there engaged in good faith commerce and Christian missionaryism. So I think that perhaps the fact that we're being flooded with opioids right now might have something to do with this Chinese propaganda narrative that they probably believe themselves, that the British forced opium upon them. Of course, it was legal everywhere in the world at the time, and there have been opium dens in China since time immemorial. You know, we have the commission that's ongoing right now. Here is Sam Cooper, who has not been asked to testify at the commission on Chinese interference or foreign interference. Sam Cooper was the journalist who published the leaks from the CSIS leaker, and then you know, the Globalist News was sued, and you have Wan Pao Wu, the obvious, you know, Chinese Communist Party asset who holds a seat in our Senate, having the commemoration of the Chinese Exclusion Act on Canada Day last year, where they bust in all kinds of Chinese people to astroturf all this stuff about how racist Canada is. And that's another part of the PSYOP, is they're always calling us racist anytime we want to, anytime we're going, hey, what's going on over there? What are you guys doing? They go, oh, it's very racist. I told him in the email that that's very racist. Yeah, that was Vincent Ke, by the way. He actually said that to Globalist News. Yeah, check out Sam Cooper over on Substack. His Substack is called The Bureau. Title here is Ottawa knew of the Chinese communist attacks on conservatives in 2021, but decided not to intervene, commission lawyer. FIC, so that's Foreign Interference Commission, here's also that the Greater Vancouver, quote, pro-democracy, close quote, NDP candidate Jenny Kwan targeted by the United Front Work Department group that supported her Liberal Party opponent in 2021. United Front Work Department is the Chinese Communist Party's proxy overseas. So they engage in a lot of the kind of influence operations and elite capture and stuff like that, gangsterism broadly, in order to further Chinese interests in countries like ours. Here's the article. Before Canada's 2021 federal election, a task force implemented to ensure fair campaigning observed a Chinese Communist Party operation discouraging Canadians from voting for the Conservative Party, but intentionally chose not to intervene, the Foreign Interference Commission heard Wednesday. And in a secret post-election report, the task force confirmed, quote, the PRC sought to clandestinely and deceptively influence Canada's 2021 federal election, close quote, the inquiry heard. Meanwhile, the inquiry heard for the first time that Chinese communist proxies targeted Greater Vancouver candidates such as NDP MP Jenny Kwan in the 2019 federal election by gatekeeping them away from vote-rich Chinese community events, and that Ottawa also knew a United Front Work Department group evidently supported Kwan's Liberal opponent in 2021 with an extravagant, quote, free lunch, close quote, event for voters, but failed to inform Kwan. Quote, in light of a media report about transfer of funds from the Chinese consulate in Toronto to campaigns, Kwan wonders whether the Chinese consulate in Vancouver may be operating a petty cash slush fund to finance such events, close quote, Kwan's witness submission said. Two of the Conservatives attacked in Beijing-funded media schemes in 2021 that reportedly originated in Toronto, former Vancouver area MP Kenny Chiu and former party leader Aaron O'Toole told the commissioner, Mary Jose Hogue, that hearing evidence proves Canada's government failed to protect its last election and the Chinese diaspora heavily targeted by Beijing. Quote, I was deeply troubled that I was exposed to the government and the government doesn't seem to care, close quote, Chiu testified. Quote, and now I have learned that they knew about it. They knew all about it. It is almost like I was drowning and they were watching, close quote. Chiu said, as an immigrant to Canada, he feels especially betrayed by leaders in Ottawa that have demonstrated in action. Quote, in my view, the buck stops with the Prime Minister, close quote, Chiu said. Quote, he let me down, close quote. Chiu and O'Toole were shown a number of intelligence alerts produced in the weeks prior to the September 20th, 2021 vote by Canada's so-called City Task Force or site task force and rapid response team units touted by the Trudeau government as world-class election safeguards. He keeps putting up all of these faux kind of committees and stuff like NCCOP that never used to exist, but everything, it all has to do with like keeping it in-house, right? Like NCCOP. That's why they were trying to get Pierre Poilievre to join NCCOP so he could be sworn to secrecy and he would be very restricted in discussing whatever came out of their investigations through NCCOP. So it has everything to do, I think, with kind of keeping it behind closed doors and keeping it in-house for the Trudeau regime instead of being transparent about the enormous challenge that we all currently face. Okay, back to the article. O'Toole was asked by the commission lawyers if he got his alert published 1 week prior to the ballot saying, quote, Rapid Response Canada has observed what may be a Chinese Communist Party information operation that aims to discourage voters from voting for the Conservative Party of Canada, close quote. Quote, no, this was not raised to our attention. And in fact, we were raising incidents of foreign interference and the CIT committee tended to downplay them, close quote. O'Toole said, quote, which is why these documents now contradict that. Okay, close quote. Yeah, and Blandrew Shear without the dimples, Aaron O'Toole, was as milquetoast as he has ever been on the stand in the clip that I showed from the commission just the other day here. You know, he should be spitting nails up there, but he's still towing that establishment line of, yes, they interfered, but no, it had no impact on the outcome of the election. The current regime is legitimate and not installed by the Chinese Communist Party, not at all. Whatever, Blandrew Shear without the nipples. grow a spine. So, okay, back to the article. Other pre-election reports from SITE and Rapid Response showed, quote, CCP media accounts on Chinese social media platforms WeChat and Douyin shared widely a narrative that conservatives' election platform suggests Erin O'Toole almost wants to break diplomatic ties with China. And the narrative has grown in scale, close quote, the inquiry heard. Ottawa knew of other messages shared between Chinese state media, Chinese media in Canada, and Chinese-controlled social media claiming, quote, Chinese Canadians are scared of the Conservatives' platform, close quote. And Kenny Chiu was an enemy of the Chinese people because Chiu had tabled a bill advocating for foreign agent registration. Yeah, it's racist. It's very racist to have a foreign agent registry. That's why Wan Pao Wu went down there with the AstroTurfers to shame us all for there ever having been a Chinese Exclusion Act before any of us were alive. Yeah, it's to call us all racist and tell us to stop looking into all this Chinese interference because that's very racist. Quote, WeChat news accounts in Canada continue to post a false claim that Kenny Chiu-sponsored private members bill would require, quote, all individuals or groups with ties to China to be required to register, close quote, one SITE report said. Another narrative recognized by SITE prior to the election was that O'Toole was supposedly a follower of Donald Trump and would be harmful to China if elected prime minister. And who is the most racist of them all? Mirror, mirror on the wall? Well, it's Donald J. Trump, right? Anybody who represents an impediment to the Chinese Communist Party's agenda of global dominance, they just call him a racist. And the most racist guy in the world is Donald J. Trump. However, there was a meeting on September 9th, 2021. A lawyer for Conservative MP Michael Chong informed the hearing in which SITE decided not to intervene because they judged the nationwide election result would not be swayed. A September 13th internal brief from the SITE presented to the hearing seems to confirm that contradictory position. Quote, Canada's electoral system and processes continue to remain resilient to the current level of foreign interference, close quote, the alert said. You know what my favorite question is, right, guys? It's how do you know that? How do you know that the elections are made resilient and the interference did not sway the outcome? But it also said, quote, the PRC continues to be focused on influencing and potentially interfering with Canadian democratic processes, having identified Canadian politicians considered anti-PRC, sanctioned by a sitting MP, redacted sentences follow, close quote. O'Toole testified the Conservatives believe they lost up to 9 seats in 2021 as a direct result of Chinese interference, and SITE should have intervened prior to the vote. Yeah, you don't say 9 seats. Like, that's not nothing. That is significant, especially when we have the smallest minority government that we've ever had in Canadian history. I think those extra 9 seats would have made a difference. I tend to think so. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the seat count is right off the top of my head, but man, well, like what would that coalition look like if the Conservatives had another 9 seats right now? Quote, to suggest an election is free and fair is not accurate. If some people are impacted, each vote matters, close quote, O'Toole said. Quote, it was a mistake not to raise the alarm, close quote. Yeah, now he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. So pretty typical for Blanders here without the nipples. Trudeau fed Beijing's disinformation narratives, inquiry hears. Both O'Toole and Chiu testified they believe Prime Minister Trudeau fed into the Chinese disinformation attacks that marred the 2021 election by pushing back on preceding Conservative questions about security breaches in the Winnipeg lab. I mean, he called the election because of the Winnipeg lab. It was in order to shut down the committee that was looking into it, because after an election, you have new MPs and you have to reform the committee and start it all from scratch. And of course, we just got that massive report that's redacted, but still very damning. We finally just got it. So things are moving forward, but they've been stalled by a few years, it seems. Quote, I believe there is some coincidence between the Prime Minister saying, don't be anti-Asian if you inquire what happened in the Wuhan lab in Winnipeg, close quote. Chiu said, quote, I don't know if the Chinese copied that attack or the Liberals copied China, but the anti-Asian line has been used continuously by the Chinese Communist Party against me, close quote. Can you Chiu? Okay. I think people are wising up to this, finally. Chiu noted that a document tabled by the commission lawyers showed him for the first time that a Chinese disinformation against him during the 2021 campaign started with the media accounts in Toronto. The federal documents tied the accounts to Beijing's United Front Work Department, the inquiry heard. Articles from Toronto attacking Chiu included an account called, quote, Coupon King 51CA, close quote. The documents tabled say and question whether this account is tied to a larger Chinese news site and WeChat account called 51.ca. A 2016 report from the Globe and Mail, not discussed at the inquiry, suggests 51.ca has historically supported the Ontario Liberal politician. Yeah, it's always Liberal, isn't it? Well, I suppose NDP to an extent too, but it's going to be the left because communism is a leftist ideology and they tend to find more ideological overlap with parties that are on the left. And parties on the left tend to be more sympathetic to them because progressives, the progress in progressivism is progress toward communism. A 2016 report from the Globe and Mail, not discussed in the inquiry, suggests 51.ca has historically supported an Ontario Liberal politician. O'Toole said he believed Beijing favored the Liberals and attacked the Conservatives in 2021 because O'Toole's party had taken stronger positions on the national security issues more aligned with the United States and Western allies. Yeah, the United States has a Foreign Agent Registry Act. I don't think that's what it's called, but they definitely have one. And you know, I don't think that Australia is quite as naive when it comes to the threat coming from communist China as Canadians are right now. Okay. Quote, we had taken strong positions with regards to the Uyghurs and the two Michaels, close quote, O'Toole said. Quote, if I had won, we would have been much more wide-eyed view with China. So that drove the interest with Beijing, and the Liberal government was preferable. The commission also heard that O'Toole might have lost votes to Russian disinformation in 2021. Quote, Chinese and China state-aligned accounts continue to amplify messages by or supportive of the Liberal Party of Canada, while Russian-friendly accounts continue to amplify People's Party of Canada related content, close quote. One election monitoring document sent. Really? Okay, that's interesting. In later testimony, a Vancouver area NDP MP Jenny Kwan testified that she believed Chinese proxies may have been involved in, quote, vote buying, close quote, or, quote, unquote, bribes that supported her Liberal opponent with a free lunch event in the 2021 election. I'm pretty sure that violates some election laws right there. A commission lawyer disclosed to Kwan that Saiti, quote, flagged this issue with the lunch, close quote, and connected it to a United Front Work Department group in Vancouver, and yet Kwan was never informed by Saiti. Kwan told the hearing she was heartbroken that some Chinese senators in Vancouver informed her they were afraid to cast votes for her because Chinese seniors, I said senators. They're afraid to cast votes for her because she openly demonstrated on Chinese human rights issues. Quote, some told me they were afraid for me, close quote, Kwan said. Quote, they said, you should be careful. Yeah, that's always a bad sign. So even our own politicians being, you know, intimidated, steered, muzzled, influenced by the Chinese Communist Party to align with China's interests. And who knows if we're ever going to get to the bottom of it. But I think, well, only time will tell with respect to this inquiry. We need stronger people in there than Blandrew Shear without the dimples, though. That is for sure. We need fighters. And here is Andy Lee, special rebel rapporteur, and she's saying Chinese Radio Vancouver works with diplomats and runs their WeChat account out of China. So no, they wouldn't host Kenny Chu. And she's retweeting herself here because here is the original video. And she says, Senator O gets the rockstar treatment at Chinese Radio Vancouver. The quote-unquote Canadian media outlet meets with Chinese diplomats and accompanied him to a recent protest in Ottawa against a foreign agent registry. It's posted on their WeChat, which has an IP address in Liaoning, China. Yeah, so again, Victor O and Wan Pao Wu, the guys who were doing the astroturfing for the Chinese Exclusion Act protest on Canada Day, which was 100 years ago. But anyway, here is Victor O showing up at this Vancouver radio station.
Alex, 你好，你好，在美国的华州南机场，然后同时看到这个听到这个直播的播报，这个华人呢去，一个是融入社区，另外更好的去这个服务社区和。
Dale, you're late. Drop and give me 20.
这个服务加拿大社会。我们今天上午刚刚和美国中文电台是在加州克完成一场这个跨国的这个直播活动。
个人都要参加好几个委员会，通常在年底啊，在做一段期间要结束的时候，可能有时候。
This is a Vancouver radio station.
我们很正常的，有时候都会开到11点或者12点晚上。这里是温哥华中文电台，温哥华上空最美的声音。
Okay.
Alex, 你好。
Yeah, so we're not really, joking when we say we better start learning Mandarin. Holy smokes. So here is an interesting little tidbit. This is an article originally published in 2015, updated in 2017. This is Langley Advanced Times. Title is New Owner for Aldergrove Zoo. So this is the Greater Vancouver Zoo. Name of individual who purchased the facility was not revealed in an official announcement. Oh, really? The Greater Vancouver Zoo has a new owner who has big plans for the 120-acre Aldergrove site. The zoo announced the sale in a press release Monday that did not identify the buyer. It said the new owner is originally from China, but has been living in Metro Vancouver for the last 10 years. Oh, whew. Okay, there's nothing to be concerned about there. Quote, many years ago, he began his career as an English teacher, but for several years now, he has been a successful entrepreneur with a passion for creating interesting and exciting places for people to have fun, close quote, the statement said. The anonymous owner has hired an expert in eco-friendly zoo design, Bernard Harrison and friends, to develop a 20-year master plan for the whole facility. The zoo said Harrison and 2 other exhibit specialists from the U.S. visited the Greater Vancouver Zoo this summer. The Greater Vancouver Zoo was called the Vancouver Game Farm when it first opened in 1970. Okay, all great. So we have an anonymous buyer. This is from 2015 of the Greater Vancouver Toronto Zoo, and he's from China. But don't worry, guys. He's already been in Canada for 10 years. And you remember what we saw from the Fox News clip there just a minute ago, where Kristi Noem was telling us how China's buying up all of these properties in certain locations where they may be able to spy on U.S. defense facilities. So here is this Chinese entrepreneur, sounds like United Front Work Department to me, buying the Greater Vancouver Zoo, and that is located in Aldergrove. So here is a shot from maps. Anyway, this isn't Google Maps. It doesn't show it as well on Google Maps, but this is from that browser that I use, Brave. And here we can see the Greater Vancouver Zoo. It's right here in this street right here. It looks like it's this larger area right here around 52nd Avenue, between that and whatever that street is. It's right off the Trans-Canada Highway. So it says Greater Vancouver Zoo. That's right there. And what do we have right across the street here in this massive open area? Well, Naval Radio Section, Aldergrove. Yeah, that's right. I remember this because we actually have I used to manage the microwave portfolio for all of Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces. And I had like several repeaters out there at this particular site, and there's all kinds of stuff. There's HF. This is the ground radio station for naval communications on the Pacific coast. It's right there in Aldergrove, right across the street from a Chinese-owned zoo. And you know what else is here that they're not going to show you on this map? It's just further to the south and west. It's a HARP facility. Yeah, it's the Americans, their HARP facility, the high altitude or whatever it is. And it's skipping radio waves off the ionosphere. And everybody thinks it's for creating earthquakes, but I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to say it's the Americans. It's an antenna farm, okay, for radio communications for the Americans. And if I just zoom out here a little bit, holy smokes, that sure is close to the American border now, isn't it? Okay, pretty good, pretty close proximity to the American border. We've got the Americans' HARP station right here that is basically co-located with the Royal Canadian Navy's Naval Radio Section in Aldergrove. And look at that, Greater Vancouver Zoo right across the street. So, yeah, I mean, when I say they got their tentacles into everything, I mean it. This is how they operate. It's full spectrum warfare, right? It's the flooding us with the fentanyl, it's the investment, it's the influence, it's the owning the radio stations, getting people into our Senate, buying up property that is adjacent to military communications facilities. Yeah, we definitely need to extricate ourselves from the Chinese Communist Party at this point. Nothing short of that is going to do. And what is our military doing? Well, this isn't really our military. This is Veterans Affairs, but I think I showed a little bit of this here the other day. Here is the official press release from the Government of Canada. Government of Canada to lead a delegation of 2 LGBTQI+ veterans to commemorate the First World War in Europe. Well, That ought to protect those naval assets from the Chinese Communist Party that are setting up shop right across the street. Okay, I'll read a little bit of this. Yeah, it's not that long. I guess I can stand it. Media Advisory, Ottawa, Ontario. The Government of Canada is leading an overseas commemorative program for 2S LGBTQI plus ampersand asterisk Octothorpe veterans to commemorate the First World War as we approach the 107th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Starting April 6th in Belgium, the delegation composed of representatives from Rainbow Veterans of Canada and the LGBT Purge, the first veteran delegation of its kind, will follow in the footsteps of Frederick Hardy, who was sentenced to hard labor in 1916 for charges relating to his sexuality and later died in battle across the battlefields of Europe. This important historical moment for veterans from the 2S LGBTQI plus ampersand asterisk divided by sign community will culminate in April 9th, where they will see Frederick Hardy's name on the Canadian National Vimy Ridge Memorial and participate in the annual ceremony. The delegation's program in Belgium will include visits to key commemorative sites, including the Passchendaele Canadian Memorial, St. Julian Canadian Memorial, and the John McCrae Memorial. They will also attend the daily act of remembrance at the Meningate Memorial. Once in France, the delegation, okay, it's just their itinerary. I don't think I need to read the whole damn thing here, but yeah. So do you think maybe we might want to get back to basics at some point and everybody just kind of focus on their jobs instead of all of this commie BS and psychological operations, Maoist takeover of the West, all of the shaming and blaming? I mean, that's what Trudeau really is at the end of the day, I think, is a Maoist. You know, it's got everything to do with this shame and hostility toward the outsider and praise for the insider. For Mao, it was, you know, there are the people and then there's the enemy of the people. And when it comes to sock boy and the alphabet cult, as Cindy is calling them, when it comes to sock boy, it's Canadian, as in Canadians, no. Whenever he's, you know, pushing his line, Canadians, no. And then the outsiders are the what do you call them? The unacceptables, right? So we're racist, bigot, homophobic, sexist, all that stuff, the unacceptables, and everybody inside in the in-group is Canadian. Okay, and here's the Epoch Times. Information Commissioner sues Defense Minister over failure to release records on COVID policies. Well, you know, at least they're honest, professional, integral, all of that stuff that every professional Western military should be. So yeah, we have a problem with integrity, honor, and professionalism at the highest levels of the Canadian Armed Forces. As you can see, they're being sued by another government office, the Information Commissioner. Subtitle is: the Commissioner's Office is seeking a court order to force the Defense Department to comply with its request and respect the Access to Information Act. Canada's Information Commissioner has filed a lawsuit in federal court to force the Department of National Defense, DND, to provide records on its COVID-19 policies as requested through an Access to Information request. Quote, the minister's ongoing violation of his legal duty to implement the commissioner's binding order issued under the act is contrary to the law, close quote, says the notice of application filed on December 18th. It adds that the lack of responsiveness is an quote, abuse of process, close quote, undermining the credibility of the Access to Information system. Information Commissioner Carolyn Maynard has previously sharply criticized the Access to Information system, saying its, quote, steady decline, close quote, has led to a point where it, quote, no longer serves its intended purpose, close quote. Defense Minister Bill Blair is identified as the respondent in the lawsuit. The Office of the Information Commissioner, OIC, is seeking a court order to compel DND to comply with its order and respect the Access to Information Act. And don't forget that Bill Blair was the guy, while Minister of Public Safety, who told Brenda Lucki to go back into that RCMP meeting with her investigators during the Portapique massacre and tell them to break with their protocol and compromise the integrity of the investigation by releasing the types of firearms used in the massacre so the Liberals could pursue their gun confiscation agenda. So yeah, this guy, speaking of a lack of integrity, there's Minister Bill Blair. He just does whatever the hell serves his masters. The notice of application states that D&D received a request for records on June 15th, 2022, asking for, quote, options, analysis, assessments, and recommendations, close quote, pertaining to the Canadian Armed Forces, CAF, quote, COVID-19 vaccination mandate and public health measures, including but not limited to masking, quarantine, physical distancing, air quality assessments, infrastructure assessments, close quote. The access to information request sought related information produced by or submitted to 5 D&D offices from January 2019 to June 2022. COVID-19 restrictions in the CAF have been controversial, particularly the COVID-19 vaccination mandate imposed in October 2021, which led to the departure or expulsion of hundreds of soldiers. It remained in place to this day for operational roles. And they are being sued, by our most courageous members. They're tip of the spear in the military. Everybody who refused the vax and is now part of the mass tort. I don't want to say class action. I think it's a mass tort that Valor Legal Action Center has underway under the helmsmanship of a friend of the program, Catherine Christensen. So, that I think that is they are leading the way. That is the tip of the spear right there. Them and Eddie Cornell, of course, with his lawsuit now over the Emergency Measures Act invocation. Okay, and back to the article here. The OIC says D&D initially requested a 90-day extension to respond, citing a large number of records, but it didn't meet its own deadline. The requester hence filed a complaint with the OIC. I don't buy that. Like the large number of records for the military's policy on COVID, that should be like one document, maybe 10 pages, and in the form of an op order. So if you don't know what an op order is, well, the first 3 pages are addressees. Okay, so the commissioner found the complaint was justified on June 12, 2023, and deemed D&D had refused access to the records. An order was issued for D&D to comply with the request by November 30th, 2023. The legal filing says that D&D told the OIC it would comply with the order, but it still did not meet the November deadline. A D&D spokesperson declined to comment, given the issue is headed to court. An OIC spokesperson also declined to comment for the same reason, but added that, quote, institutions not implementing her orders is a concern for the commissioner. Yeah, I'll say. The OIC spokesperson noted that departments are required to comply with the orders to release documents unless they apply to the federal court for a review. The OIC rarely resorts to legal action to force government departments to respond to access to information requests. It's the second time Ms. Maynard has taken legal action since the start of her tenure in 2018. Last year, the OIC took the Trans Mountain Corporation to court to force the release of records. The judge sided with the OIC in a September 2023 decision. COVID scrutiny. D&D and the CAF are facing other legal actions with regard to their management of COVID-19. Active and recently released soldiers have filed 2 separate lawsuits against the CAF's leadership, alleging abuse of power and violation of charter rights in relation to COVID-19 policies. The list of alleged infractions includes, quote, ignoring established law, close quote, on the right to privacy, informed consent, and the right to choose medical treatment. That has always been an issue in my entire career. Not like before COVID-19, there's no respect for the Privacy Act whatsoever. Like people one of my last immediate supervisors went digging into my medical stuff that was never supposed to leave the desk of the commanding officer, for crying out loud. They seem to think that they own you. They really do. They don't. I don't. If you started talking about the human rights of the troops, like they would scoff at that. Military leadership. Okay, back to the article. In a statement of defense for one of the lawsuits, the Attorney General has called the legal action, quote, scandalous, frivolous, and vexatious, close quote. Yeah, okay. The legal challenges include a total of 458 individuals, one of which is the originator of the information request being litigated by the Information Commissioner. Attorney Catherine Christensen, who represents the soldiers, says the OIC's legal recourse against the defense minister is, quote, long overdue but welcome. Quote, D&D CAF has a long history of blocking the release of documents necessary for litigation, including on the 2 mass torts now before the court. It has to be asked what they want to hide, close quote, she told the Epoch Times in a statement. Everything. They hide everything. Absolutely everything. Don't forget, it was the general. They were doing, they had a captain who testified at Mark Norman's trial there, who said that when he was running the search, the information search, he went to the general and he was like, I can't find anything related to Admiral Norman here. And the general was like, it's not our first rodeo, as in it's not our first cover up. And really all he had to do was tell him that his code name, his call sign Kraken, by the way. That was, I don't think that's classified anymore, so I could probably talk about that. But yeah, he's retired now. So that was Admiral Norman's call sign, and using call signs for VAPs is common practice in a military setting. It just adds a layer of security, even when you're using unclassified communication media. Okay, along with not releasing records requested to the Access to Information Act, Chief of Defense Staff General Wayne Iyer has yet to address several grievances ruled on by the Military Grievance External Review Committee last year, the MGERC. MGERC, a non-binding administrative tribunal, found that the CAF's vaccine mandate was, quote, not in accordance with the principle of fundamental justice, close quote, and breaches the Grievers' Charter rights. Yes, that is correct. And that's why I say that that's the tip of the spear. That was really the first decision that we had, favorable, that is, with respect to vaccine mandates, was out of the Military Grievance External Review Committee. So, here is, speaking of no respect for privacy, as the regulars will know, like I'm always talking about the fourth turning and how the boomers must be stopped. And the reason that the Canadian Armed Forces has been in a state of total collapse for 30 years is because that is the institution in which the boomer generation reaches peak institutional power first due to the lower retirement age and the higher rate of attrition. But they have seeped into the other institutions now. That would include the Legion, which is disgraced. They defamed James Topp. They refused me service for not taking the jab. They refused a ton of us service for not. That's when I started wearing the hat. This hat right here, it says "Lest we forget," and I've got the lest crossed out because we forget. I mean, we forget that people died for these freedoms, and the Legion of all institutions should have been leading the way, showing some courage in all of this, and they're spineless and sniveling and corrupt, just like the military is right now, because of this overlap, this kind of generational overlap. So here's an article from CTV News Saskatchewan. Title is "Afghanistan Veteran Pushes Ahead with Lawsuit Against Saskatchewan Legion and Veterans Affairs." Okay, so a Saskatchewan veteran says he's still pursuing his lawsuit against the Royal Canadian Legion after he discovered a Legion staff member was snooping into his and other veterans' records. Internal Veterans Affairs Canada, VAC, emails shared with CTV News last year outlined a months-long investigation into breaches of the personal, medical, and other information of up to 6 veterans by one service officer at the Regina branch of the Legion. I bet you that's a boomer. I'm just going to plant a flag on that. I could be wrong, but yeah, I mean, I'll bet you $5. The veteran who shared the information with CTV News filed a statement of claim against VAC and the Saskatchewan Legion last May, seeking damages in excess of $500,000. In the lawsuit, the veteran is known only as CD. The privacy breaches stem from an agreement between the Legion and VAC that allows Legion service officers to access veterans' personnel, financial, and medical records in a federal government database in order to help them apply for benefits. They're required to have signed permission to represent a veteran before accessing files. Yeah, no kidding. Just scandalous. In its defense, Veterans Affairs says it moved swiftly once it discovered there were several privacy breaches from the Regina Legion branch. Quote, VAC was made aware of the allegations that Paul Valacque improperly accessed veteran records in 2021-22. I recognize that name somehow. The Veterans Affairs lawyer says in a statement of defense filed in October. Quote, VAC Security promptly investigated the allegations, included that Paul Valacque had improperly accessed the plaintiff's CSDN file without a proper justification. Paul Valacque's access to the CSDN has been revoked, and his reliability level security status is in the process of being revoked, close quote. If you don't even have reliability status, like good luck getting a job with Government of Canada. Okay. In the internal emails of, well, I don't really know that. I'm sure you can get stuff without your reliability status, but that's pretty bad when your reliability status is revoked. This isn't like, frickin' top secret special access or anything like that. In the internal emails the veterans shared with CV News, one VAC staff member said they found Valacque demonstrated, quote, a lot of carelessness when accessing files, close quote, on the database. 2 Regina veterans were sent letters saying their private information was accessed, quote, where there was no work-related requirement to do so, close quote. Well, that's gross and nosy and creepy. Quote, we have discussed this in the past about how the RCL service officers seem to be overreaching for their scope of work for VAC clients, close quote, a staffer writes in an email from September 2022. And that sounds just terribly familiar. I mean, we have this problem all over the CAF where the boomers, our supervisors, feel like they have every right to all information about us, including all of the private medical stuff that they're not supposed to see. There's a reason why we keep medical information private in Canada. It's so we don't face discrimination, right? But they don't have any respect for anybody. So in the September 2022 investigation into the Regina Legion, VAC questioned the Legion's Veteran Services Director, Carolyn Hughes, about why Vlachwe needed to access certain files. She responded that in many cases he, quote, could not recall why he would have accessed them in the past, close quote. Hughes also said previous staff at the Legion branch weren't tracking their access at all. Quote, unfortunately, for the last several months, he was working there. He and also the previous officers were not keeping any form of tracking whatsoever, close quote. That's the story of my career. It's like every time I get to like the next level, you go from like, you know, the tactical to the operational to the strategic. Everywhere I went, it was just like, there's no tracking, there's no systems, there's no nothing. Like what the hell has everybody been doing for the last 30 years? You got to build everything from scratch. Okay. A security officer at Veterans Affairs noted Vlachwe included minimal detail when filling out the online forms requested for access. Following his investigation, the federal department changed the rules to require slightly more detail from the Legion service officers when accessing the database. When contacted by CTV News last year, the director of the Legion's Saskatchewan Command, Chad Wagner, said he had only received direct information about one privacy breach from VAC. He declined to comment as it was still before the courts, and he did say that veterans were free to withdraw their consent from the Legion service officers at any time. Everyone should do that, like right now, and get with one of the many way better organizations that are out there helping veterans right now. Veterans for Healing in my hometown here. The Veteran Farmer, I hear lots of great stuff about them. If you need help with your VAC stuff, then go to one of these other groups and stay the hell away from the creepy Legion. In a statement of defense filed in August, the Saskatchewan Legion took issue with CD's choice to launch a lawsuit anonymously, saying it was, quote, impossible for the defendants to present and file a responsive defense, not knowing the identity of the plaintiff, close quote. The Legion also argues CD's anonymity violates the rules of court. The Legion says his claim is improper, quote, a nullity, close quote, and should be dismissed. Yeah, of course, they're not going to try to make him whole. Despite calling for significant financial compensation from the Legion and Veterans Affairs, CD says he was So what he really wants was to see a change to the agreement between the federal government and the Legion to prevent this kind of unregulated access to private information of veterans, many of whom now suffer disability as a result of their service. Quote, I think ultimately if VAC just wants to was to see just how badly they've gone through that system and run amok with it, they'd just take it away. I would like both of the individuals from the Legion to lose their jobs. Good. They should not be working in that space with a vulnerable population, close quote. He told CTV News in March. Yeah, a lot of people who are working with veterans should not be working with that vulnerable population. We're freaking cash cows, man. I'm having to go through this March of Dimes now. I'm not having a good experience like dealing with these outside providers and stuff like that. It's just, it all goes to the lowest bidder, and we're something like the livestock in the system. Okay. Quote, unfortunately, I don't have control over that kind of stuff. So that's why we ended up asking for money, which is silly because it was never about the money, close quote. Yeah, okay. So I'm glad that somebody's out there holding these guys' feet to the fire, and hopefully these Legion officers get fired at the very least. Okay, and yeah, okay. And here is what's going on with the senior leadership of the Canadian Armed Forces here. This is the Ottawa Sun. It says, after facing criticism for woke agenda, General Wayne Eyer's X account no longer allows comments. Well, that's very courageous of you, General. Yeah, we saw here previously, I was reporting on it, when he was blocking multiple veterans for calling him out on his commie BS. Jeremy McKenzie, Alex Cabana, and a few others. Okay, so here is this spineless, sniveling, throne sniffing bureaucrat and masquerading as a professional officer. And subtitle is, "We observed a concerning increase in malicious and misinformative engagements that proved detrimental to the Canadian Armed Forces ethics, values, and communication objectives," close quote, said a DND spokesperson. Oh, are you snowflakes melting? Oh, no. Public comments on the official social media account of Canada's top soldier have been blocked by the military because of the nasty remarks being made about the general as well as the government policies. Yeah, that's maybe it's not everyone else, woke Wayner. Maybe the problem is you and your frickin' commie policies. The move was made in January after the Chief of Defense Staff, General Wayne Eyre, faced an increase in negative comments about his alleged poor leadership and his decision to bring in what some describe as the Liberal government's quote-unquote woke agenda. Defense insiders have told this newspaper that Eyre is extremely sensitive to the criticism he has faced. Some of the controversial elements of his time as defense chief are the move to a gender-neutral dress code and the decision to allow military personnel to have colored or long hair, face tattoos, or long nails if so desired. Like, that is so... Eyre is extremely sensitive to the criticism he faces for destroying Canada's military. That would be a more succinct way to say that. Eyre has faced additional criticism from the military personnel and the public for a variety of issues, including the lack of housing for troops, ongoing sexual assault in the ranks, and Eyre's decision to join the standing ovation in the House of Commons for a Waffen SS veteran. Yeah, it's not going well, is it, Woke Waiter? Oh, God. Yeah, they can't clothe us. They can't clothe the troops. They can't feed the troops. And the ongoing sexual assault in the ranks, I don't think is a fair statement. It's really more like in the upper echelons now, because it's always been the boomer generation and they are the ones at the very top. And that's where, I mean, General Vance, case in point. Eyre did not provide comment to questions submitted by this newspaper. National Defense spokesperson André-Anne Poulin confirmed the decision to shut down the public comments on Eyre's official X account. Quote, "In recent months, we observed a concerning increase in malicious and misinformative engagements that proved detrimental to the Canadian Armed Forces ethics, values, and communication objectives," close quote. Poulin noted in an email to this newspaper. Quote, "Considering this, we made the decision back in January to close the comments on the CDS Chief of Defense Staff's X account," close quote. Okay. They're not interested in hearing any concerns from the public. Everybody, if you're concerned about the sharp downturn in military professionalism over the last few years, especially under the tenure of Woke Wayner, then that is malicious misinformation. Poulin stated that, quote, "This measure is aimed at," it's criticism. Everything we talk about, everything they call misinformation is criticism. Poulin stated that, quote, "This measure is aimed at preserving a positive and respectful environment for everyone accessing our information. We believe it is crucial for a platform to uphold standards that promote constructive interactions and discourage harmful behaviors that counter the core principles of the Canadian Armed Forces." Oh, were you harmed by the words, Wayne? Oh, God. National Defense would not answer whether there were other official Canadian Forces accounts that prohibit public comments or whether Eyre's account was the only one. It appears, however, that the only official Canadian Armed Forces account on X that does not allow comments is the one assigned to Woke Wayner. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced they're so weak. These leftists are so weak. You see, like, this is another one of those things that's really encouraging, that like the people that we're up against are weak, inept cowards, and they're super dumb. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced in January that Eyre would be retiring this summer. Eyre has been defense chief since 2021 and in command of the military during one of the most tumultuous times, which has included widespread allegations of sexual assault and misconduct among the senior ranks. Thank you. That is a more fair statement. Eyre was named acting defense chief in February 2021 after it was revealed that military police were looking into misconduct allegations against then Chief Admiral Art MacDonald. Now, that one I think is dubious. It was probably more the case that Art MacDonald was like, no vaccine mandate, that's a human rights violation, and we are the people who put our lives on the line to advance the cause of human rights in countries that we don't care about for people we never met. So this goes against everything that we stand for, and anybody who did that got slapped with a sexual misconduct allegation and were shoved aside so they could get their yes men Woke Wayner in the seat and force that gene therapy experiment on all the greatest Canadians alive. The Liberal government named Iyer as the full-time chief on November 25th of that year, even though no charges were laid against McDonald. But Iyer himself has a controversial tenure. In the fall of 2021, Iyer angered Canadian Forces personnel when he blamed the military sexual misconduct crisis on the COVID-19 pandemic for an exodus of personnel. Quote, "We need our mid-level leaders to dig deep and do this for the institution, to put service before self, not to retreat into retirement, but to advance forward and face the challenges head on." Close quote, Iyer stated then. Yeah, it's everybody else's fault. This is what they've been doing for decades, is they blame all the new people that are coming into the ranks, even though like it's been a scandal-plagued mess ever since they got there. So the boomers, that is. And Scapegoat. Read the book Scapegoat. Cindy got that one for me. I really appreciate. I have some great followers around here. It really is more like a movement. But yeah, Scapegoat by Peter Worthington and Kyle Brown. Kyle Brown was the scapegoat for the Somalia affair. He was actually the whistleblower, and that is what the boomers do: is they go after whistleblowers like Julian Assange instead of seeking accountability. Now, when they were the whistleblowers, like say Deep Throat, and who's the Bob Woodward? Bob Woodward was the boomer journalist at the time who broke the Watergate scandal. And at that time you could go to the institutions and they would root out the corruption, but now that corruption is all the way at the top, and so we can't expect accountability. Okay, retired and serving military personnel said Iyer was out of touch and that the exodus of personnel had started long before the pandemic or the sexual misconduct crisis. Poor leadership and concerns about quality of life were among the issues cited by those who had left. Yeah, that's the boomers. Poor leadership. It's been that way for decades. And he, when he says, we need our mid-level leaders to dig deep, like we're not being tough enough here or something like that, do this for the institution, he means his career. When he says service before self, he says he really means me, my image, my career. That's service to him. We all need to put his career before ourselves. And it's just despicable. Like he's basically shaming all the veterans here, like we're being unprofessional and cowardly here for not, bending to his every whim to advance his career. Okay, others criticized Iyer for admonishing soldiers who had committed a large part of their lives to serving in the military, noting they had the right to decide when they should leave. Iyer later acknowledged his comments, quote, "It did not sit well with some current and former members," close quote. That's because they're atrocious, okay? It's not because, like, this is the guy who can't even leave the comments open on his X. And he's basically implying with this statement that we're all being too sensitive, right? Did not sit well with some of the current and former members. Yeah. Well, the comments on my X are open there, Wokewainer. Iyer also faced criticism for promoting several senior officers who would later be engulfed in allegations of sexual assault or misconduct. He talked about the need for a culture change to stem the number of sexual assaults, but during his tenure, the number of reported incidents of sexual misconduct and assaults has increased. Now, that is also due to the fact that they have expanded definitions. So, it used to be like when the boomers would come up that sexual assault was sexual assault. And that everybody understood what that means. But when it comes to sexual misconduct, that could include things like, requests for dates from unattractive people. Just go and read the literature on that stuff. Okay. So last year, Trudeau, Iyer, and other senior government and military officials faced a lawsuit from Major General Danny Fortin for their alleged roles in Fortin's removal from command and a military police investigation into allegations of sexual assault. Fortin was ultimately acquitted of the charge. He settled his lawsuit out of court last year, and that probably had everything to do with the fact that Fortin was not going to go along with the vaccine mandate as well. Okay, now, this is some very somber news coming out of Gaza. I reported here, I think it was yesterday, on there was a strike on Al Shifa Hospital, which has been an HQ for Hamas for, basically like the last couple of decades probably. And this was the one, the Al-Shifa hospital was the one that Hamas had reported had been leveled by an Israeli airstrike, when it turned out that it was just a failed rocket fired by Hamas on the Gaza side and hit the parking lot next to Al-Shifa. And they said there were all these casualties. It was all, a big lie. And the New York Times reprinted Hamas propaganda verbatim. But now it seems that we do have a real tragedy, a real friendly fire incident there, where these aid workers, the World's Kitchen, I think it's called, were killed. And as it turns out, one among them was a military veteran, and a Canadian military veteran. And this just goes to show you that, all the greatest people serve. And this guy this is clearly somebody who has dedicated a lifetime to serving his fellow humans, and showing a lot of courage in going into war-torn Gaza Strip to provide such aid. But fog of war, I guess, is all I can say here. It's tragic, but a Canadian was among one of those killed. A Canadian killed Monday, along with 6 other aid workers in the Gaza Strip, was a military veteran from Quebec, whose death leaves behind a partner and a 1-year-old son. Jacob Flickinger, 33, joined the World Central Kitchen aid organization last fall at the urging of his good friend Jonathan Duguay. Flickinger had been helping the group in Gaza since early March. Quote, Jacob was a fantastic guy, close quote, Duguay said in an interview. The two met in 2010 when they were serving together in Afghanistan, he added. Quote, he was always supportive, always smiling, close quote. Duguay himself joined the World Central Kitchen in September, helping with food aid to Morocco following the devastating earthquake near Marrakesh. In November, he convinced Flickinger to come on board. Their first aid mission was in Mexico, providing food after Hurricane Otis slammed into the Acapulco area as a Category 5 storm. We were both diagnosed with PTSD after Afghanistan, close quote. Duguay said, quote, this aid work changed my life, changed our lives. We used our military skills to bring solutions in chaos, close quote. Sounds like satisfying work. They traveled to the Middle East in early March as World Central Kitchen was planning major expansions, including ambitious plans to deliver first aid to Gaza by sea in more than 2 decades. With Israel enforcing strict rules on aid coming in by truck, World Central Kitchen devised a plan to build a makeshift jetty on the northern Gaza coast. They used the rubble of destroyed buildings to build up a small pier from which pallets of food could be unloaded by a small crane from boats onto waiting trucks. The first shipment of about 200 tons of food was sent across on March 15th, carrying cans of vegetables, proteins, bags of rice, and legume. His second left Cyprus on Saturday with twice as much aid. Duguay was on the Cyprus side. Flickinger was part of the Gaza relief team. They spoke multiple times by phone or by text. Their last phone conversation on March 31st was just about normal things, discussing the shipment. Flickinger wasn't scared or apprehensive, said Duguay. Quote, he just wanted to help people, close quote. At 3 a.m. on April 2nd, Duguay was awakened by his phone ringing. There was another aid worker from Gaza calling to say, and quote, incident, close quote, at the warehouse in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza had killed 7 of their colleagues. Quote, I knew Jacob was there, close quote, Duguay said. The convoy had just delivered food to the warehouse and was driving away when the Israeli airstrikes hit. An attack on the Israeli government has characterized the tragic mistake. Duguay, the Israeli government has characterized it as a tragic mistake. And I did show, there was the IDF general there who did a public statement in the form of a video. I think I showed that here last night. And that was what he was saying as well. Like it was a tragic mistake. It was at night and it was a drone attack. So it's terrible. Duguay said the teams felt safe because the Israeli Defense Force was told of the plan. Israel had approved and provided security for the construction of the jetty, World Central Kitchen said. Quote, we had an agreement with the IDF, close quote, said Duguay. Quote, there was a special route. They knew where we were, close quote. It was Duguay who delivered the tragic news by phone to Sandy, Flickinger's partner, who was at home in Costa Rica with the couple's baby, whose name the family has chosen to withhold. Flickinger and Sandy met almost 5 years ago at a cold water plunge in Quebec. Flickinger is a dual Canadian and American citizen. His father is American and lives in Miami. But Duguay said Flickinger grew up in St. George, Quebec, about 100 kilometers south of Quebec City. Quote, he fell in love immediately, close quote, said Duguay. Duguay was due to leave Cyprus on April 4th, and Flickinger was scheduled to leave not long after. Instead, Duguay flew to Montreal on Tuesday before he heads to Costa Rica to join Sandy and her father. The Canadian Armed Forces said Wednesday that Flickinger served from 2008 until 2019. He joined as a reserve infantry member with Le Régiment de Chaudière and was deployed to Afghanistan as a rifleman. He joined the regular force as infantry with Quebec's storied Royal 22nd Regiment. That's the Vendu, the storied Vendu, known as the Vendu in 2012. He was a master corporal when he retired from the Army in 2019. Flickinger's father, John, said in a Facebook post that his son's death was a, quote, heartbreaking tragedy, close quote. Quote, my son, Jacob, was killed Monday delivering food aid to starving families in Gaza, close quote. John Flickinger wrote, quote, he died doing what he loved and serving others through his work with the World Central Kitchen, close quote. A GoFundMe page has been started to raise funds for a funeral and a trust fund for Flickinger's son. Nearly $30,000 had already been raised by Wednesday evening. Also killed in Monday's airstrike were Lao Zomi, Francom, 43, of Australia, who shared a video less than a week before she died, working at the warehouse near where near where the convoy was hit. It's saying warehouse. It keeps saying warehouse here. I was seeing all kinds of report that it was actually at the Al Shifa hospital. So, yeah, a little bit of confusion there, I guess. Polish national Damian Sobal, 35, began volunteering for aid groups when his hometown of Przemyśl became a haven for refugees fleeing Russia's bombing in Ukraine. Palestinian Safeddin Ism Ayed Abuta, 25, was working for the charity as a driver. There were also 3 British military veterans killed, all providing security to the team, including John Chapman, 57, James Henderson, 33, and James Kirby, 47. Duguay said he knew both Francom and Sobel as well. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said has called their deaths inadvertent, something that, quote, happens in war, close quote, he said. Canada is demanding more of an explanation. So are Poland, the United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States. Quote, the world needs very clear answers as to how this happened, close quote, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Wednesday. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who is in Belgium attending a NATO foreign ministers meeting, said she spoke to Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz on Tuesday night. Quote, we're calling for a full investigation, close quote, she said. On social media, Katz ordered condolences to the families of victims as well as to their respective countries. The incident will be investigated by qualified authorities to ensure that necessary conclusions are drawn to guarantee the safety and security of aid workers going forward, close quote, he said. Yeah, let's hope that we do get a full accounting of what happened and lots of transparency on this one. We had the Tarnak farm incident early in Afghanistan as well, where Major Harry Schmidt killed 4 Canadians and wounded multiple others. And, he was courts-martialed and he ended up getting a not guilty verdict. I talked to one of the guys that was there too. I knew a guy who was wounded, and he seemed to think that it was a good judgment. I was like, I don't know how that could be because, well, I guess maybe he knows the details that I don't. But anyway, let's hope we get lots of detail on what happened here and a good reporting on this. Okay. In an essay published Wednesday in the New York Times, the World Central Kitchen founder, Jose Andres, pleaded with Israel to start the, quote, long journey to peace, close quote. Quote, we know Israelis in their heart of hearts, we know that food is not a weapon of war, close quote, said Andreas, a celebrity chef from Spain. Quote, Israel is better than the way this war is being waged. It is better than blocking food and medicine to civilians. It is better than killing aid workers who have coordinated their movements with the Israeli Defense Forces, close quote. Andreas said the deaths of his 7 colleagues are, quote, the direct result, close quote, of Israeli policy, which, quote, squeezed humanitarian aid to desperate levels, close quote. Duguay said his plans to help the family with funeral plans, but insisted the tragedy wouldn't keep him from returning to his job at the World Central Kitchen. That's not what Jacob would have wanted, he said. Quote, we make a difference to people, close quote, said Duguay. Quote, we need to continue to feed people. That's my mission. It's what Jacob's main mission. He was a brother in arms. We were mates. I'm going to miss him, close quote. So, yeah, the compare and contrast here between Woke Wainer and his experience with being too weak to handle the comments on X, and then we have these younger generations of military veterans, just all the courage in the world, and really going in there into the most dangerous and difficult of situations to try to help people. So, the contrast is not lost on me here. Just sounds like a real gem of a man. Well, it is what it is, I guess. So here is Reuters. So there's all kinds of stuff, of course, going on over there in Israel. It's hard to tell if things are heating up or cooling down, quite frankly. Many of the other of Iran's other proxies have gotten active since the war to destroy Hamas began. And now we have some action here from Damascus. This was in Syria. Here's Reuters, and they say Iran vows revenge on Israel after Damascus embassy attack. Dubai, Jerusalem, April 2nd, Reuters. Iran said on Tuesday it would take revenge on Israel for an airstrike that killed 2 of its generals and 5 military advisors at its embassy compound in Damascus, raising the risk of further escalation in conflict in the Middle East. The strike marked one of the most significant attacks yet on Iranian interests in Syria, where Israel has stepped up a long-running military campaign against Iran and groups it backs, as the Gaza war has rippled around the Middle East. Until now, Iran has avoided directly entering the fray while supporting allies' attacks on Israeli and U.S. targets. Israel has not claimed responsibility for the attack, which destroyed a consular building adjacent to the main embassy complex in the upscale Meza district on Monday night, killing 7 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. That's the IRGC. And this is from April 3rd, so just yesterday, and it was I was just checking to see if Israel took credit for this one yet, but I don't think that they have. So who knows what's going on with that. But I don't doubt that it was them. They may just not want to say, yeah, we attacked an embassy in Syria, because Hezbollah was using it as a base of operations, which is something they have a history of doing as well. They would do this with UN outposts monitoring ceasefires between Hezbollah and Israel. They've been doing that for decades. They'd set up shop right in some of these UN outposts and start firing off rockets and try to draw fire from the Israeli military, and hopefully get casualties, civilian casualties or UN casualties on that side. So that's a tactic they've been up to for a long time. And anyway, this may be one of those situations where Israel is just bombing the crap out of these generals. They got 2 generals from the Quds force, and they may just deny it because it took place in an embassy. I'm not sure what's going on, but that's a little bit of some just my initial thoughts on the situation. Okay. The embassy, quote, was not a target, close quote, the official said. Iranian Supreme Lunar Ayatollah Ali Khamenei vowed revenge. Quote, the Zionist regime will be punished by the hands of our brave men. We will make it regret this crime and others it has committed, close quote, he said. Khamenei's political advisor, Ali Shemkhani, in a post on X, said the United States, quote, remains directly responsible whether it was aware of the intention to carry out this attack, close quote. Okay. I don't know why I throw the United States in there, but okay. According to actually, well, I do. I mean, the United States is the great Satan and Israel is the little Satan, according to the IRGC, according to the Ayatollahs. According to Axios, citing a U.S. official, Washington told Tehran it, quote, had no involvement, close quote, or advanced knowledge of the Israeli strike. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the strike and called on, quote, all concerned to exercise utmost restraint and avoid further escalation that could lead to a broader conflict in an already volatile region, close quote, his spokesperson said. Iranian state media said the death toll was 13, including 6 Syrians. 2 security sources in Lebanon said at least 1 member of an Iranian-backed Lebanese group, Hezbollah, was killed in the strike. Syrian civil defense teams were still going on Tuesday to clear the rubble as ambulances were parked nearby. Iran's ambassador to Syria, Hossein Akbari, who was not injured in the strike, said the flattened building housed his residence. He could be seen exiting the main embassy building on Tuesday with his security guards. So did they really hit the embassy, or was it just something like a building in the compound of the embassy? Okay, deterrence posture. Sorry. Okay. Iran's United Nations mission said the attack was in violation of the, quote, foundational principle of the inviolability of diplomatic and consular premises, close quote. Akbari told Reuters it showed total disrespect for international law, and both Iran and Syria had the right to respond. Wafa Badr, a Meza resident, said she was home in the kitchen when she heard an enormous blast. Quote, I was knocked unconscious for about 10 minutes. We were so surprised by what happened. Both our cars are destroyed, she said. And then they're going into a deterrence posture. I think that's probably good for that article there. But yeah, all kinds of real mess going on over there right now. So you have all these different proxies in these different countries all attacking Israel. Well, it's not looking good right now. I mean, in terms of the information wars, it never does, of course, when we have a tragedy like this. And so here is Tedros Adhanom, I don't know how to say his last name, but Dr. Tedros. And he says, the situation in Gaza is disastrous. Once again, WHO demands a ceasefire. Once again, we call for all hostages to be released and for lasting peace. So I don't know, speaking out of both sides of his mouth, I guess, as we might expect, he's calling for a ceasefire. But of course, they still have hostages. They're still holding hostages, Hamas is. So that would defeat the whole purpose. Like leaving Hamas in charge and letting them keep the hostages would defeat the whole purpose of having the war and the invasion in the first place. And so he's also saying release the hostages. Like if they release the hostages and surrender, the war would be over. So all right, here is the video he showed.
At the moment, the situation looks disastrous. Since the conflict began, WHO has verified 906 attacks on healthcare in Gaza, the West Bank, Israel, and Lebanon, resulting in 736 deaths and 1,014 injuries. Only 10 of Gaza's 36 hospitals are still able to function, even partially. WHO will continue to support those hospitals to deliver services as best they can. I repeat, hospitals must be respected and protected. They must not be used as battlefields. More than 33,000 people have now been killed in Gaza and almost 80,000 injured. We're seeing a very high burden of respiratory and skin infections and diarrheal illness. This Sunday marks 6 months since the conflict began. WHO welcomes last week's UN Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire, and we call for its immediate implementation. Once again, we call for all hostages to be released and for lasting peace.
So empty virtue signal, I think, coming from what Banks, I think, is aptly characterizing as evil Tedros, communist war criminal. Yeah, he is a commie war criminal and probably twice guilty of genocide now in light of the global pandemic and his mismanagement of it. If it's even mismanagement, I think a lot of it is deliberate. Okay, so this is kind of the line that we've been seeing out of the progressive side too, where they're kind of speaking out of both sides of their mouths. Now they seem to be, well, I mean, he's not even just progressive. He's probably like more like a communist overlord. Yeah, this is kind of the line that they are taking. And we can see that. I'm just going to show some other examples here. This is Richard Marceau. He says 4 unions call for Canada to suspend arms trade with Israel. 2 of them, CUPE, NAT, and PSAC, AFPC, are already being taken to human rights tribunals for anti-Semitism and discrimination by Jewish members. No surprise there. Yeah, that is true. We've covered that here before, where, since all of this stuff broke out with October 7th, we've seen kind of a lot of these unions showing their anti-Semitism, and that is because they are on the left. They are progressives, and progressivism is a movement to destroy the West. And Israel is seen as a Western power in the Middle East. And so they use all the same propaganda narratives against them that they use on us, all the stuff about colonizers, conquerors, apartheid, and all of that stuff. And here's Jonathan Kay. He says the sociology department at Toronto Met has passed a resolution denouncing Israel, accusing it not only of genocide, but also several other sides, including edugicide and scholasticide and epistemicide. Okay, so yeah, there's all the made up words that we expect to come out of these Orwellian progressives. So that is the position that apparently academia is taking as well, or, this kind of pseudo academia that we have right now, indoctrination instead of education, so on and so forth. So yeah, the unions, the academy, they're all lining up on the progressive side and calling this genocide and this kind of thing. Here is Dr. Phil, and this is Never Again Live podcast, and they say Dr. Phil confronts two female Hamas propagandists on the question of whether the October 7th Hamas massacre would be considered genocide and whether it was morally acceptable. Joining Dr. Phil is Mossab Youssef, the son of Hamas leader, that's son of Hamas founder. I show Mossab Hassan Youssef his quotes and videos and stuff like that all the time. I think he's a very powerful voice in all of this. Continuing with the tweet, he also confronted the two keffiyeh-wearing Hamas supporters and punched holes in their argument that while pointing out their hypocrisy. Okay, this is about a 4.5-minute clip. I think I'm getting on in my programming here. I hope we don't run too long for you guys, but I might just let this go because Dr. Phil has been on fire lately. Here he is.
Recipients of that violence, and we are first asked to condemn violence. I find that there's a sense of hypocrisy in those questions when our suffering is not being recognized, and the first thing we're asked is to condemn.
What do you think Israel was going to do when Hamas cuts a hole in the fence and comes over the top and kills 1,300 people? What did you think they should have done?
I think they have every right to go in combat with Hamas, but I don't think they have the right for 92% of the death count to be civilians.
If they burn an infant in a crib, do you see that as a moral equivalent to a collateral death from a bomb being dropped?
So that's a good question. I just want to put a correction in there. They're saying 92% of the deaths are civilian. That's not true, even by Hamas's own numbers. It's about 50-50 and 2/3 women and children. So I find the numbers that Hamas are putting out there to be dubious. And I've shown some other things here where it's like the casualty rate increases at a linear rate on a graph. I've shown that here, and that's not how these things work. They tend to be a lot more erratic, where you have like these really bad days and then these other days that aren't so bad. But yeah, it looks quite fabricated, and it's hard to tell, what the real casualties, what the real numbers look like when they're using human shields on the Hamas side. And they have been lying from the very beginning. I keep pointing to the example of the Al Shifa hospital, but it's not 92% are civilians. It's about 50-50, and 2/3 are being reported as women and children. But I would caution everybody on when it comes to trusting the numbers coming out of Hamas.
To a collateral death from a bomb being dropped as an act of war.
They have explicitly targeted civilian areas that have been marked as civilian areas. Israel has the registry for every person in Gaza.
And if that's where the enemy is hiding, do they have a right to attack them?
No, they do not have the right to kill.
There are some things that are just fundamental human decency. And when I ask you if what happened on October 7th is something you condemn, and you say, well, you have to look at that by looking at hundreds of years of conflict. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's either right or it's wrong, and it was wrong, and I don't need 100 years of conflict to know it was wrong.
The fact of the matter is that Hamas, yes, did take innocent life. Why did Hamas take away innocent life? Why was Hamas platformed?
It says senior at University of Michigan.
Why was Hamas funded? Why is Hamas empowered to take away innocent life?
Let me tell you something. when somebody comes over a fence and goes into someone's house and burns their infant in its crib, I don't give a damn why they did it. It's wrong. I've read it that
Moshe Hassan Youssef here was he looked like he was quite satisfied with Phil's response there.
the charter of Hamas is to eliminate the Jewish race, beginning with Israel, but not stopping with Israel, wiping them off the face of the earth. Is that true?
Now, this guy, like, bit of a personal hero of mine. I've seen him speak at the UN as well. Like I said, he was the son of the Hamas founder, went turncoat on Hamas, started working for the IDF, and probably saved tens of thousands of lives from suicide bombers during the Second Intifada. So, yeah, quite a hero. And he lives in California now.
This is true, but it does not end there. Now we have the problem with the pro-Palestine who are actually giving Hamas cover. They are participants in the crime. In fact, since October 7, I personally don't differentiate between Hamas and what's so-called Palestinians. Because actually there is no Palestinians. There are tribes. There is the tribe of Hamas, and there is the tribe of the Islamic Jihad, and there is the tribe of Khalil, and there is the tribe of Nablus.
I say the same things, guys. Like, politics is tribal, and that's what they're doing in Canada right now. Is they're balkanizing us into tribes, so we can be like every bit as collaborative as we see in the Middle East.
And each one has different interests, and all of them are conflicted. If they did not have Israel as the common enemy, they would kill each other. This is the reality of what's so-called Palestine. Rhetoric? You don't know what Palestine is. Actually, in fact, the keffiyeh that you are wearing, this is just a statement to show that you really lack the authenticity to represent the case. And what's so-called the cause, you know, this is a human problem.
So you just...
The cause must die. I think enough is enough. And now it's proven, and you are helping Hamas to prove it to the world that Palestine depends on the destruction of the state of Israel. And this is not acceptable, and we are not going to agree to it. And I tell you something, for the next 10 or 20 years, the Palestinian people will pay the bill that Hamas is caused today, and most likely in blood.
To you, Hamas and Palestinians are the same. They're one and the same.
After October 7, yes, there is no difference.
Really?
This is what I call Arab level based right here.
Really?
The vast majority of the Palestinian people support Hamas.
Really?
This is a fact. This is proven by statistics, and your silence now. You cannot even condemn Hamas and say that what they did on October 7 was an act of a savage group. You don't have that power.
Said I condemn.
On what authority do you speak? You only speak on the authority of Hamas propaganda.
No, why do you say that I'm speaking on the authority of Hamas propaganda?
Because if you were a decent human being, you can say that the thousands were killed on October 7. That was a crime against humanity. It was a genocide.
Well, something like an attempt at a genocide, and Hamas does have genocidal intentions, and he's right to point that out, Phil, that's right in their charter, right? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's, you know, a euphemism for wiping out Israel and the Jews. I think they actually had something in there about driving the Jews into the sea at one point. And there is that line that they quote from the Quran from the Day of Judgment, where the trees will cry out, the trees and the rocks will cry out, "Oh, Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." All of the trees except for one. Apparently, it's a Jewish tree or something like that. Yeah, so Arab level based. I can see some folks are enjoying it. As you're saying, based legend here. Cynthia is saying bravo and giver. Yeah, I mean, if anybody. This guy, Jesus, I mean, like his life is going to be under threat for you know the rest of his days. So if anybody is in a position to really speak on this, it's this courageous man, Moshe Hassan Youssef. So Okay, and here is another line. You heard all this stuff there about the colonialism that was coming out of that university student and whatnot. Here is, well, Nikki Ashton is tweeting out, First Nations have located evidence of over 2,300 children in suspected unmarked graves near residential schools. Communities need support to bring their children home. And Jonathan Kay is retweeting this, and he says, 3 years, 0 graves. So everybody around here probably remembers this. This was the Kamloops residential school line. Now, there were a couple of different schools that did this. One school has actually done the excavation of the site. These were the sites where they had the ground penetrating radar, which is an exaggeration of what radar really does. All it does is detect soil disruptions, where they can say that this section of soil has been disturbed at some point relative to the surrounding soil. Most, like, the best explanation that I've seen is coming from True North, where they say that it was probably a septic bed that was installed or dug up at some point at the Kamloops school. But one school that did the excavation found rocks in the basement, not children's bodies. But that soil disruption was pushed by the mainstream as evidence of Canada being a genocidal state. So you can see how, this is the communist narrative, communist, progressive, but I repeat myself, narrative with respect to the West. It's all part of the PSYOP and the shaming tactics, the Maoist shaming tactics that they deploy against us. And here are progressives in Canada saying the same thing about us that everybody says about Israel.
We know that since that time, communities have located evidence of more than 2,300 children in suspected unmarked graves at or near former residential schools and Indian hospitals. Communities need answers. They need to be able to bring their children home. Here in northern Manitoba, communities like Cross Lake, Opaskwayak Cree Nation, Norway House, Saging, and others need answers. That's why 3 years ago, I supported the call of Chief Monias, Councillor Robinson, and others to invite the International Commission of Missing Persons to Canada to aid them in their search for these children. Unfortunately, Canada's response has been less than acceptable. They got back to us with a form letter. Despite the commitments to truth, to reconciliation, and the understanding of the absolute moment that we were in, given the news out of Kamloops. Almost 3 years later, Canada has done very little to support Pimachikamak's call and the work that it has done, along with others, with the ICMP.
Maybe this person is genuinely oblivious to the fact that this is all lies. Because if Canada responded appropriately, we would have had a full forensic accounting of what happened by now. And if there ever was a mass grave of children somewhere in Canada, we would probably have a monument erected with their names on it by now. So she seems to be naively pressuring the government of Canada to take such action that would absolutely falsify her narrative.
We now know that the federal government, the Liberal government, is planning to sunset programs in Indigenous services and Crown Indigenous services that also include this area, seeking truth when it comes to the burial grounds around residential schools. This is unacceptable. Cross Lake's call, the call made by other First Nations and other Indigenous communities must be heard. Their desire to work with the ICMP, a world leader when it comes to unmarked graves and seeking truth, must be supported by Canada, by the federal government.
Okay, so there you go. We're genocidal here in Canada as well. And Shiloh over on Rubble is just saying, sorry, I'm very late, Sergeant Major. I know, 20 push-ups it is. All right, great job, man. Great. Way to own it. Way to own it, brother. So I appreciate you being here. And geez, I hope it's not, hope that time change isn't too much of an inconvenience for you there, bro. I appreciate having you around, but feel free to let me know. Here is Chanel Fall on X, and they're saying, watch how city councillors at the city of Quesnel react when Dr. Francis Widdowson asks them a simple question relating to misinformation about unmarked graves on their record. After some effort to discredit her and evade the question, counselors Scott Elliott and Lori Ann Rudenberg tell her they don't want to hear from her. She is not welcome there. The crowd cheers, burn the witch. This is the woke mind virus in all its glory. Those afflicted become absolutely convinced that their quote-unquote noble cause justifies their intolerance and evil acts. Yes, very much so. Woke, willingly overlooking known evils, particularly communism. They refuse to see that they have become the oppressors they claim to oppose. Quote, the greatest tyrannies are always perpetuated in the name of the noblest causes, close quote. Thomas Paine. Great quote and great comment from this guy. But let's check out the hysteria.
Please state your name and your community where you're from.
So just for a point of clarification, how many questions are we allowed to ask?
It's supposed to be a comment or a question.
Okay, my name is Francis Widowson. I'm a professor, was a professor at Mount Royal University, and I am a senior fellow with the Frontier Center for Public Policy and a board member for the Society.
Please let the individual ask the question or state the comment. Thank you.
And I'm a board member for the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship. My question is about the attachment or the item concerning the press release, a news release from the British Columbia Assembly of First Nations. On this press release, it states that the Tk'emlúps the Kamloops Band, first brought forward evidence of unmarked graves at the site of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in 2021.
Point of order. If she has a question to that organization, she needs to.
No, I have a question about this being read into the record here. Does the council concern itself with misinformation? Is it opposed to misinformation being spread and entered into the record? If so, does it agree that this is misinformation because there is no evidence of unmarked graves at the Kamloops Indian Residential School? So do you agree that misinformation should be spread in your records?
Question. Councilor Rudenberg, would you like to take a stab at that?
This is a question coming from a tenured professor who was actually fired from her role in the Departments of Economics, Justice, and Policy Study.
Excommunicated from the cult, obviously, for blasphemy, right?
At Mount Royal in Calgary following allegations of workplace harassment and intimidation.
And this is the shaming that we're seeing. This is Maoism in action here.
This was during controversy. This happened around comments she made on how residential schools had positive educational benefits, and when she questioned if the abuse that occurred actually equates to cultural genocide as described in the Truth and Reconciliation Act. You really have no place here asking your questions. We really don't want to hear from you.
So evidence, is there any evidence? There is no evidence. So, can you show me the evidence? Shame on you for asking for evidence.
You didn't answer my question. You didn't answer my question. Do you think that the council should be spreading misinformation?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Her opinion in this chambers does not count. She's asking us to comment on something that comes from qualified individuals that dealt with this, that lived through this. Ma'am, you are not welcome here. These things are just out of control.
So you're not going to answer my question. So you're not going to answer the question. Is that correct?
This is a pretty courageous woman here. Like, man, oh man, is she ever handling herself well?
Okay. The question.
Do you agree that the council should spread misinformation? There is no evidence of unmarked graves at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. And we need to have the report released from the Beaulieu report.
Mr. Chair,
And we
there
need
is
to
no
have
question here. I
excavations.
ask that we just stop her
Excavations are
from
needed to make
talking.
that determination. Answer my question. Do you agree that you should spread misinformation?
There is no answer to this question.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for adjournment.
Most transparent government everywhere. I mean, I know this isn't the federal government, but this is what we're seeing across the board. It's like I'm always saying, she blasphemes the woke dogma, so they just cry heresy and go for the pitchforks. And here is Wokeness, and they're tweeting out: University of Texas was forced to lay off 60 DEI employees after SB 17 passed. Nature is healing. Okay, so it looks like several states are cracking down on the DEI stuff. Florida, now Texas, and here we go.
I cried, and I was angry. A lot of people are upset. All of my group chats are raging. All of the group me's, all of the slacks, everybody is raging.
They say the people and experiences close to them are being ripped away. According to our partners at the American Statesman, at least 60 staff members who were previously in DEI roles have been notified that their last day is at the end of the semester. In a letter to the UT community, President Jay Harsel wrote in part, quote, "To reduce overlap, we are closing the division of campus and community engagement and redistributing the remaining programs," end quote. That division used to be DEI related, and like similar departments, had to change its name in January because of the new law.
This is just Texas. Texas does not want us here. Texas has never wanted us here.
Christiana McAfee with the Black Student Alliance says a lot of the DEI related jobs are filled with people who look like her.
Cultural Marxist, big surprise. And Stephanie is dumping a bunch of really good links around the residential schools narrative there, the mass grave narrative in particular, that is. So check out her comments, guys. She looks like she's putting some good articles up.
Most of us Black students, these are our only letters of recommendation. These are the only people that we can get close enough with to build a further relationship with us.
A lot of them were just there for me and gave me a lot of resources, and were always there when I was unsure of what to do or if I just wasn't feeling right about something.
Yeah. And who was just saying, Cora was saying, people being moved by emotion rather than logic. That is kind of the whole problem in the nutshell. And that's how propaganda works. Don't forget. Okay. Like, always ask yourself, are they manipulating my emotions, or are they appealing to my intellect? Because that is how propaganda works, is it manipulates your emotions, drives you into a radical frenzy. We see the impacts of that, especially in the younger generations who are being indoctrinated instead of educated. And so it's just hysterics across the board. Okay. And here is Circulon. I like this guy's account. Circulon. He's got the 8 times jabbed, triple masked, the Ukrainian flag, pride flag. Well, I think the 2 different pride flags, cricket and UN, in his username there. So that's fantastic. And he says, what do you see? We see white supremacy, sexism, racism built into a patriarchal colonial system designed by the settlers to oppose women and minorities. Yeah. And he's tweeting out a graphic here. These are the mayors of all the various the major cities in Canada. It's Toronto. That's what's her name there? Anyway, everybody is a minority except for maybe the Montreal mayor here. She looks like a regular French lady. Vancouver, Oriental, Calgary, Brown, Edmonton, Brown, Toronto, Oriental. So yeah, it's not lost. The irony is not lost on us when we're being accused of white supremacy, sexism, and racism built into a patriarchal colonial system. And everywhere you look, it's minorities who are in these offices of prestige. Here is Libs of TikTok, and they say, wow, one of Canada's top medical schools, Queen's Health, has announced they will discriminate against white people. They have special programs called QARMS, which is an, quote, accelerated route to medical school, close quote, and the qualifications are you must be Black or Indigenous. White people have to go through medical school the regular way. So on the one side, the soft bigotry of low expectations puts people like Jody Gondek in charge, and she's the first Canadian mayor, I think, to be recalled right now. She got booed at the Calgary Flames game not too long ago, which was fantastic to see. So, we have a lot of people who are underqualified and inept being elevated to these positions of power through that intersectional Marxist lens of DEI. And like James Lindsay says, DEI has to die. And then on the other end, we have some people getting into these highly technical fields like medicine, where people's lives are on the line. And here's what it says. It says candidates for the QARMS pathway must meet the following criteria: be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada, and identify as Black African, Black Caribbean, Black North American, or a multiracial person who has and identifies with their Black ancestry and or Indigenous. Well, at least you only have to identify as one, guys. So as long as you say you identify as a Black or Indigenous person, you can get into med school. Now, some of the younger generations are starting to wake up to this. So white people are evil, racist, awful, incompetent, and we need women and minorities to save our civilization. And here is the Joe Rogan Experience companion, and he's tweeting out, she's awesome, try to stick it out, it gets better and better. Okay, so some of the younger generations who've been indoctrinated into this nonsense, I think, are getting a rude awakening as they become more and more in touch with the world. And I thought this was rather entertaining. So here is
he took me back to his house, not because he wanted to do anything, because he wanted to show me the renovations he's doing in his basement. You don't go to basements on a first date, Reagan. I know, but he had barn doors. He was making a whole nother apartment all by himself. He bought this house. And his car. And it's nice. And his car. Did you see his car? No. It's brand new. It's a 2021 SUV. It's beautiful. It has a screen in it. Yeah. I started to forget about everything else, and I was just like, wow, I could start living like this. And he was so respectful. It was beautiful. So, do you think you're going to go on a second date? He wants to bring me to his hockey game tomorrow. He wants to pick me up and bring me to his hockey game. So I can come watch him. It's so cute. He says he wants to take me thrifting beforehand. So so we can pick out outfits for each other and not let each other see. And it's what we have to wear on our next date. That's what he said. This feels like a pretty good first date, Reagan. It's my first white guy.
my first white guy. That's what she says.
I mean, no offense, but I think I kind of been missing out. He has a house at 25 years old. I'm only 22 and I don't know what I'm doing. But I think I might want to move in. It's nice. It's cute. I can get used to it.
All right. So there you go. Maybe we're not so rotten anymore. Hey, or not so rotten after all. Hey, white guys. Okay, and here is Amy Ham. So, like I said at the beginning of the program, wokeness hurts women. This is Amy Ham from BC. She's been fighting a lot of the transgender ideology and you know, the COVID stuff as well. She's of course being defamed and stuff by her professional, but she's a nurse. I saw her at the Free Speech and Medicine conference. See if I can get her on for an interview here sometime. I reached out to her, but makes to say she's waking up from the woke nightmare. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And Stephanie is saying she is not ready to be a trophy wife. Yeah, you know, she should probably work on herself quite a bit. She's pretty young. I think 22, it says, before she jumps into the trophy wife role. Okay. And but, you know, I would say that is the kind of harm that's being done to woke women. It's an impediment to their happiness, the wokeness. You know, it just breeds bitter, resentful, odious women, and hopefully that young woman is coming to her senses before it's too late. And of course, well, there are various ways I think that wokeness really hurts women. But let's see what Amy Ham has to say. It says, troubling truths about the male-female divide on radical progressive hogwash. A majority of Canadians reject quote-unquote wokeness, according to recent polls, but more than that, a new paper in the Scandinavian Journal of Psychology reveals something else, a male-female dichotomy. It is women who, for unclear reasons, disproportionately promulgate and buttress such progressive ideology. These findings are not surprising to anyone who has loudly opposed the politics of woke, myself included, and who has largely female wrath and who has had largely female wrath visited upon them for their heresy. You know, I think that the human survival strategy is bifurcated along gender lines. You know, men tend to they tend to seek status. Like women are attracted to wealth and status. Men are attracted to youth and beauty. Men tend to value freedom, independence. Women tend to value safety and security. It has everything to do with the fact that our babies are basically born prematurely because of the narrow birth canal that's created by the upward posture. Our hips are actually they connect on the bottom of the pelvis as opposed to the side, like other primate species do, to accommodate the upright posture. And we have these massive brains and this tiny little birth canal. So the way that evolution has overcome that is to basically give birth to babies prematurely, and they're totally helpless. And so women are in the ancestral environment entirely encumbered with newborns, and they have to breastfeed and stay with them basically 100% of the time. And so they tend to seek they tend to be attracted to men who can assure the survivability of their offspring by providing safety, security. They're good at getting resources, self-sacrifice, chivalry, that kind of thing. So women tend to kind of accumulate over on the left, the collectivist mindset. Right, because what are the collectivists always saying? Like safety and security. That's us. Like we're the ones who are going. Justin Trudeau's always talking about keeping Canadians safe and stuff like this. So yeah, I tend to think that men and women vote in line with their mating strategies. Essentially, men tend to lean more towards the right. Women tend to lean more towards the left. And it just has everything to do with inherent differences between the sexes. Okay, so back to the article here. Women should reject leftist radicalism. We suffer because of it. Instead, we promote it at work, in universities, in politics, our communities, and at home. We are the primary drivers of woke hogwash. This admission is both humiliating and enraging, but it's true. Canadian institutions are beholden to mostly female minority, and not only bore us to tears, care to hear another personalized land acknowledgement, anyone, but terrorizes us at the mere scent of wavering fealty. That's because it's a cult. Quote unquote wokeness has been described as everything from political epithet for boogeyman of the extreme left to a catch-all for any cause whatsoever that concerns itself with the well-being of an identifiable group. A more reasonable definition, borrowed from political scientist Yashe Monk, is that wokeness is a version of social justice based on what he terms, quote, the identity synthesis, close quote. It views human beings not as individuals, but as a collection of group identities that are either oppressed or oppressive. And to be oppressed is to be virtuous. To be a victim is to hold precious social cachet. The more oppressed one is, the better the person they are, the more we should all be forced to cater to their very whimsical desire. It goes without saying that wokeness is a race to the bottom of human dignity, potential, and uniqueness. Well said. One term I think I would have included in that paragraph would be cultural Marxism. The oppressor oppressed. It's got everything to do with Marxism. Wokeness has infiltrated every aspect of our society, from education to employment and sports, yet it is women who suffer the most severe consequences. We are the ones who have lost our private spaces and sports categories. Our girls are expected to undress in change rooms with grown, intact males. Complaints are not permitted. We've been accomplices in silencing ourselves, demonizing ourselves, and cheering on those who wish to refer to us and by our body parts or functions. That any woman accepts, quote, uterus owner, close quote, or, quote, chest feeder, close quote, as something other than misogynistic tripe is incomprehensible, utter nonsense. Why would we do this to ourselves? The Scandinavian researchers refer to an emergent and global public discourse on quote unquote woke as a debate that has been, quote, largely data free, close quote. In response, they crunched numbers from 2 studies to reveal the huge sex divide on the subject. The authors retitled quote unquote woke with academic flourish as, quote, critical social justice attitudes, close quote, and who holds these attitudes the most. Women, of course, more than twice as often as men. In saner times, the statements the researchers used to gauge public sentiment would read as bad parody, but we do not live in sane times. Study participants were asked to agree or disagree with everything from, quote, university reading lists should include fewer white or European authors, close quote, and, quote, the ideas of Karl Marx should not have more influence in national politics, close quote, to, quote, there are no biological differences between men and women, close quote. The statements were selected oft-used opinions espoused by the shills of intersectional feminism, queer theory, and post-colonial theory, among others. Postmodernism is the current iteration of cultural Marxism. The resulting analysis concluded these ideas had, quote, little to no support from men, close quote, but, quote, moderate, close quote, support from women. The authors did not support an explanation and suggested future studies examine why women are, quote unquote, woker than men. Why is this happening? Does far-left ideology fill a void in certain women? What is that void? Is it that droves of Western women are deciding not to have children? Are we replacing babies with, quote, oppressed people, close quote? Is it simply in our female nature to be drawn in by a lure of what some see as virtuous compassion for the downtrodden? Yeah, that's a factor, I think, as well. There is ample evidence that empathy is a biological and sex-differentiated phenomenon rooted, unsurprisingly, in the female role of motherhood. And while modern feminist theory has it that divergent behaviors between the sexes are always taught and enforced, socially constructed, as they say, scant evidence supports such a claim. Of course, scant evidence supports such a claim because you can look anywhere in the animal kingdom and see similar trends in sexually dimorphic species, which is the majority of them, especially mammals. Female compassion is an enticing explanation for all of this. However, if we accept that women embrace wokeness because of their relatively more empathetic nature, a new problem emerges. Why, when women are shown the naked truth, sometimes literally, a la exhibitionist males in our private spaces, about the harms of this ideology, do they simply not denounce it? Why do they want to stick around to find out the next degrading moniker they're expected to refer to themselves by? If, quote, front hole haver, close quote, doesn't inspire all women in a vicious rage, I can't imagine what will. There's something more going on. If women possess an evolutionarily superior sense of compassion, it doesn't make sense that so many of us would happily give our daughters rights to fair sports or sex-segregated spaces, or accept that female rape victims should shut up about the males inside their refuges. They're not compassionate or empathetic things to do. No, they're not. But if you're woke, than they are, because these people, the transgenders, are higher up on the intersectional hierarchy of oppression than biological women. Biological women must yield to those who outclass them on that hierarchy of oppression. Okay. Some claim that a cabal of wealthy, powerful men is taking advantage of women's good nature and manipulating us into wokeness. This claim is neither compelling nor complimentary of female intelligence. Quite the opposite. To argue that Machiavellian men have the prowess to control our thoughts and actions necessitates our entire sex being stupid. We need to admit instead that a subset of women is complicit in this culture-destroying, thought-terminating scourge. There is a deep cruelty in radical progressiveness. To woke persons, others can only be saintly or evil, nothing in between. It evokes the psychology of the in-group, out-group dynamic, which curiously is a dynamic more often enforced by females. In psychology studies, women have also been shown to demonstrate higher degrees of malevolence when compared with males. Perhaps this is the uncomfortable answer needed to explain the male-female wokeness divide. Perhaps it is not a tendril of our good nature that makes women woker than men, but merely a reflection of our darker, malicious side. Yeah, I mean, Florence Nightingale and the Devouring Mother and child abuse. Women actually abuse children are most vulnerable in single mother households. Even like single father households are safer environments for children statistically. Yeah, it's a dark and complex picture, really, that requires a much more nuanced view, I think, on human nature than the wokesters are willing to accept. Whatever it happens to be, what's clear is that we need more women to demonstrate the courage of their convictions and denounce the destructive far-left dogma that is running roughshod over the majority of Canadians. Thank you, Amy Ham. That is a pretty courageous position to be taking. And here is Darren Grimes, and he's saying his name is Adam Graham. He is a male double rapist. No government will ever compel me to refer to this scumbag as a woman. And this is Isla Bryceland, transgender rapist, jailed for 8 years. I didn't go and dig up the original story here. This graphic, I think, suffices for the purpose of making my point that wokeness harms women. And it's not really just my point. It's also Amy Ham's. Wokeness hurts women. I say harms. But why do so many support it? Okay, so here's another example, right? So we have these young women that are very much confused about how to find happiness. And we have some of these older women that are fed up with this crap. And also we have, these women having to share their spaces with convicted rapists. And here's Elon Musk. And here is one of the most ultimate harms, I think, is done to young women, in particular, adolescent females. Elon Musk is tweeting out, "I'm cool with adults doing whatever they want so long as it doesn't harm others, but kids need to be protected at all costs." I mean, yeah, I agree with absolutely everything in that statement. That is a glorious statement, and I couldn't have said it better myself. He's retweeting Ian Miles Chong, who says the vast majority of gender confused or quote-unquote gender questioning children grow out of it, according to a 15-year longitudinal study conducted in the Netherlands, which tracked more than 2,700 children from age of 11 into their mid-20s. Being transgender is a trend. It's a phase some kids go through and eventually grow out, including those who undergo irreversible surgeries. The surgeries, the treatments, the therapies all need to stop immediately. Yeah, this is the sickest thing that's ever happened in Canada, and it's wokeness, right? And these are some of the most vulnerable people among us, adolescent girls, who have a nasty tendency to kind of get swept up in whatever happens to be trendy at any given moment. And right now, it is trenderism that tops the trend list. Yeah, pretty sad, sick stuff. But at least the UK, like we're starting to see in Europe and the UK, they're turning this around. It's North America that's behind the curve on this one here. Hopefully this is a a harbinger of things to come, that the UK is turning things around. And this is the article here. I don't think I'll read the whole thing. I'm already kind of way over my time. I'm off my game now that I'm back in the evenings. But here is the Veterans for Freedom website, everybody. So you can go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter by clicking subscribe here. Join Veterans for Freedom if you're a veteran by clicking join here, and support Veterans for Freedom by clicking support here. You can donate to our operational costs to help me pay for my StreamYard account and the website by clicking donate, or you can support the Veterans for Freedom Support Fund with a monthly credit card donation that you can sign up for by clicking one of these buttons here. And if you don't want to use your credit card, you can send your e-transfer to fund@veteransforfreedom.ca. So that's fund@veterans4freedom.ca, preferably with your auto deposit enabled. But if you're not able to do that, please use the password Fund for Freedom. That's all caps Fund, number 4, all caps Freedom, and we'll make sure that gets off to a worthy cause. Last month's winner of the who got the most votes from the people who donated was Carrie Sakamoto, who's been vaccine injured. I had her on the program here a couple of weeks ago, and she did a very touching video thanking us for the support. So yes, whatever you're able to give is very much appreciated, and we'll make sure that that gets off to a worthy cause indeed. And that brings us all the way back to Epictetus, who says, the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Well, we have a hell of a lot of glory ahead of us there, folks, because these are some challenges I don't think that previous generations ever foresaw coming, really. I mean, you know what? And in a way, we do have it better than previous generations too. You gotta look at previous fourth turnings, like the Second World War, the American Civil War, the American Revolution, the Salem witch trials. So we're out here fighting a meme war and an ideological war, and I mean, we all pray that it doesn't go hot, especially kinetic, that is, with the Chinese Communist Party and the Islamunists taking over North America and the West. So, but anyway, as it stands right now, I think we're stacking up the wins. We'll probably see a setback sometime before the end of the year, but the momentum is turning in our favor. So let's just make sure that we remember that the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. All right. And Brenda says, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Brenda, for being with us. I appreciate it. And Debbie says, great show. Thank you, Debbie. Stephanie says, I am going to get banned, aren't I? You? Never. What's going on? Why would you get banned? Because you're sharing a book recommendation. It says, Feminist Mistake, Radical Feminism Culture ebook. I am into that stuff. I did a lot of reading on feminism, like around the mid-2000s and stuff like that. Feminism was like the gateway drug for me. That was the one. There's a book. It's on my shelf. It's called Spreading Misandry. Misandry as in hatred of males. You know, like misogyny is hatred of females, and misandry is the hatred of males. But the fact that you don't know the word misandry and you do know the word misogyny says everything you really need to know about the current discourse around gender issues, doesn't it? But it was that book. It was written by, what's her name? Catherine, I forget. Paul Nathanson and Catherine Young of universities of McGill and I don't remember the other, Queens, I think, Queens and McGill, respectively. And it's legit. That was the first time that the idea of cultural Marxism was proposed to me. That was what they said in Spreading Misandry. Is not only does third wave feminism is it culturally Marxist, but it shows all the signs of being a religion as well. And as I started to understand more about that, I started to see other forms of cultural Marxism crop up everywhere. So feminism is kind of a gateway in that regard, I think. The third wave stuff, at least, third and fourth wave. Cindy says, thanks, Jeff, as always. Have a great week. Night all. #winning. Yes, indeed. Marion says, have a good night all. And Aj says, thanks, Jeff. Great show and practice sounds of silence. I'm sure you would rock it. Sure, I got lots of time. Yeah, sounds great. Patricia says, good show, Jeff, as always, and gives me the hearts. Have a good night, everyone. And Cora says, thanks again, Jen. Everyone remember to email the man who is holding 40 million Canadians hostage and give him a piece of your mind. Release our people. And Jolie says, she's giving us the hearts, Jeff Havely. Stephanie says, thanks, Jeff. P.S. I love males, especially Caucasians. Right on. At least somebody does. I know you guys do, for sure. I want to be an American, says on Rumble, says, we are the best. I kind of want to be an American too. I was going to take off for the United States when I retired from the military, but I don't know. I just can't help myself. There's still a hell of a fight. We got a hell of a fight on our hands here in Canada, and we got to hold this ground, right? Our ancestors sacrificed to give us all these adventures in Canada, or all these advantages here in Canada. So, yeah, I decided to stay just so I could have this fight. I'm a sucker for punishment. All right, guys, that's it for me for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, stay frosty and stay safe.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs.